open. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. We have a special guest tonight. We're going to get started with Steve Grumbine. We'll bring him in just a second. But first and foremost, I do want to go ahead and show you what we are discussing tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So you are aware. It's a crazy week, you guys. Tonight's theme is the awful truth because you'll see it when we get into these stories. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to discuss Theo Von checks JD Vance. Yes. I finally got a chance to watch that interview. It was interesting that he brought these things up to the vice president of the United States, but kudos to Theo for doing that. We're also going to discuss crazy tensions right now in the Middle East. Iran warns U.S. bases, and the U.S. is on high alert. We'll give you the updates about that particular situation. Israel has said they are prepared to strike Iran. We're also going to discuss, this is a different type of story, but we got to talk about it, folks. Tyler Perry Backlash. What did Tyler Perry do this time? It appears his new movie, although it has been very successful when you talk about ratings, has seemed to divide the Black community in a sense. What did he do? We'll get into that. We're also going to discuss this part here with Steve Grumbine as well. If you haven't heard this is crazy. Josh Hawley, senator here, he is trying to push the $15 minimum wage increase. I'm not joking, not making it up. We'll get into that conversation and about what the government can do when it comes to spending money. And last but not least, this is a very good story. Oregon has just voted to block private equity healthcare. That's a big one. So the woman there that you see in that purple rectangle, that is the governor of Oregon. Could this spread to other states? We'll have to get into it. And we're also going to discuss the breaking news story about the Boeing plane that crashed in India earlier today. So we'll get into all of that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in Steve Grumbine here. He's been on the show before. It's been quite a bit, but Steve can tell us so much here about the deficit, the budget, spending through MMT. Welcome back, Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's been a while. You're right. It's too long.
Well, we have so much to talk about when it comes to MMT. First and foremost, again, for some people who are maybe a newer viewer, they may not be aware of what MMT is. So if you can explain to people what modern monetary theory means, and then we can dive into this whole myth about the debt ceiling.
Right. So most of the economics that we've all been taught, and I mean, all of us have been taught, there's nobody that missed it, has been completely wrong. It was like based on the gold standard. It was based on governments borrowing from private banks to survive, and governments going broke, and taxes. We pay taxes to fund all these things. And you got these pitched battles between right-wing, folks, working class people, and left-wing working class people fighting about spending priorities. And I don't want my hard-earned tax dollars going to this, and I don't want my hard-earned tax dollars going to that. And really what we found over the years, especially beginning like in 1971, when Richard Nixon took us out of the Bretton Woods Accord, which was kind of like a worldwide gold standard, we found out that we were in something. We were always in this, but we didn't really know. I think maybe some people knew, but we all started to find out in 71 that they took us off the gold standard. And we have what they call a sovereign, meaning we own it. Free floating means it's not pegged to any commodity. Fiat, meaning by decree. In other words, we spend it into existence. Our Congress, through Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, has the power of the purse. And when it says spend, we create money and we spend it into existence. Your tax dollars don't have anything to do with that. And what we found is that taxes literally delete money. That's what they do, because they always spend new money. And if we didn't tax, there'd just be mounds and mounds and mounds and mounds of money in the world. And so there's a way of getting rid of money, and that's through taxation. Taxes actually delete money from the system. So what MMT does is it describes how the system that we have today, not some future system, not some system we could implement, but the proper way that the actual system works. So when you think of things like the deficit, big deal. When you think about things like the national debt to whom? We create the money. Who is this debt to? Tell me this miracle debt that we're talking about. And so we found that almost everything that we fight about amongst each other, the working class, is screwed up because we've got well-meaning lefties going, I don't want my taxes going to Israel. And we got other people on the other side going, well, I don't want my taxes going to your gay wedding or your abortion or whatever it is that they fancy in their brain is happening. So what MMT does is it describes all of that, and it explains it in great detail. And once you understand it, pretty much all the news starts becoming very perturbing. All the economic conversations start really grating on your nerves because they make a lot of lies up that we literally fight about nonstop. And MMT debunks all of them. Really, it's great.
So let's get into the taxes, okay? Sure. Because, and I've done this before too. A lot of times we have a tendency, we say that I don't want my hard-earned tax dollars paying towards such and such. So right. let's take Gaza for example. Right now, there is an organization called Taxpayers Against Genocide, and they have a suit. They are suing Congress because they're basically saying that they did not agree to have their tax dollars go to fund the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
Where would you say, is that tax dollars or is that federal dollars?
No, it's not tax dollars in any way, shape, or form. I get into arguments with allies always, not because I want to fight with them, but because I'm trying to explain something that they clearly don't know. And how could you know if this isn't something you studied or you researched or whatever? You're just going off of what they've always told you, right? And what they've always told you has been a lie. And so when you think about taxes, the reason for the tax is it creates the monopoly of the US dollar for the government. This is why Bitcoin will never displace the dollar, because the power of the gun, the power of the IRS, the power of the state backs the tax. So if you don't pay your tax, they're not coming for your Bitcoin, they're coming for your US dollars. And so when you look over there at like Elon Musk, for example, getting his billions and billions and billions of US dollars and subsidies for SpaceX and for Tesla and for all these other things he does, that's, again, the purpose of the tax is to make that money matter. That money matters because you have to spend it to pay your taxes. And that is the loop that they have us in. That's the loop, not just that the US has, China has, Australia has, the UK has, all these folks have. So what happens, and this is why it's so nefarious, they spend whatever they want on whatever they want, whenever they want. But the minute that you or I say, help me, I need my teeth fixed, or help me, I need to have a home, or help me, I need clothing, I need food, whatever, they go, wow, I don't know where we're going to find the money for that. We're dead broke, man. What can I say? The country is spending irresponsibly. It's out of control, right? But in reality, all your taxes do, and there's a real technical way of explaining this, and I don't think the average person needs the super technical way of explaining this. But what happens is that spending and taxing are completely separate from one another. The government spends Article 1, Section 8 money into existence. It passes a law. That law then goes through the president. The president signs it into law. That law then goes over to the Federal Reserve, the nation's bank, and it then keystrokes the deposits, just numbers like on a calculator or whatever, right into the ledger for the Treasury. The Treasury then spends it to whoever the bill said we're spending this money on. Now, we have other things that get a lot of money spent on. The reason why I'm bringing this up, because I know we want to talk a little bit about the debt ceiling. And so whenever we have unemployment or we have problems with agriculture and food stamps and things like that, there's these things called automatic stabilizers that have long since been passed forever ago. And these stabilizers kick in periodically when certain conditions hit. We have unemployment. Well, we have unemployment money going into the economy now. New money, every time new money. So when I hear somebody say my hard-earned tax, they could not tax us enough to cover all the spending that goes on, right? There's just no way. And so when you think about the zero sum of it all, if taxes pull money out of the economy and delete them, if we keep raising taxes to pay for things, that's more money that's being deleted. That's more money that's being destroyed. And what happens when you destroy money and take it out of people's hands when they need it right here, right now? You create austerity. And when you're poor, austerity hurts a hell of a lot more than when you're rich, when it's just like a drop in the bucket. So taxation isn't about funding things, but it is about priorities. Do we want to have a more equal society? Do we want to tax the wealthy for things that they do that we don't like? Do we want to make a limit on how much they can earn so that they can't buy our democracy? We don't have a democracy. Let's be fair. There is zero democracy in this country. So, but the point is that when you think about what taxes do, taxes take money out of the economy. Taxes create the necessary obligation through fines, fees, penalties, and taxes that keep the monopoly power of the US dollar alive and well. And you want to extrapolate this out to the rest of the world, you've got another kind of obligation. You want to buy oil and stuff like that. You have dollar reserves that people use that keeps the rest of the world tethered. But they also did something else slick, and they did this to the global south mostly. And you could even look at Ukraine and Russia and others. They have the IMF, which is an arm of US imperialism that issues loans in US dollars. And it creates these conditions that create almost like debt peonage slavery around the world. And they are doing everything they can to pay a foreign debt in US dollars. So how do they get US dollars? Well, they certainly don't print US dollars. They don't create US dollars. So they've got to sell their goods and services to us to get US dollars. And that's how we maintain empire. And if they don't agree to the things that we put out there, we just send the military, or we send a CIA coup in there, or SEAL team to knock out a leader and put up a prop dummy in there to do it. So that's the name of the game. The taxes don't fund a damn thing, but they do create the obligation that maintains the strength and power of the US dollar.
So I guess the question that I have is that, so are our tax dollars paying for the genocide? If
They're
not,
not paying for anything. It's all brand new money. And so let me tell you how this works. The US government says, hey, we need a jobs program. Let's go ahead and send money to Halliburton, Boeing, and all these other military contractors. And they, in turn, will then send goods and services to Israel. Like, we're going to send bombs. We're going to send Bill Gates's version of AI that helped them target the kids in houses, and daddy's home kind of shit with the Palantir and all the rest of the stuff. This is how they do it. They spend that money into existence to the military contractors, who then, in turn, because the law states they were going to send $500 billion or $500 million of tanks to Tunisia or to so-and-so or to whatever. That is what they said. They don't need our US dollars. They need the goods and services. They need the bombs. They need the technology. So our government buys those things. Taxes had nothing to do with it. The one thing that taxes did have something to do with it is to enable the dollar to be strong and powerful, because we need it, or they're going to take our house from us. They're going to take or they're going to garnish our wages. They're going to do whatever. So the tax is a very powerful form of coercion that keeps us needing to get US dollars. And again, it has not, their dollars are deleted. They literally, when they come into the government receives a tax dollar, they don't respend them. A dollar is only spent one time by the government, once, and that's when it's spent into existence. When it comes back to the government, it's destroyed. It doesn't have a life of its own. It literally is gone. So never, your taxes don't fund Social Security. They don't fund student loan repayments. They don't fund abortions. They don't fund Israel. Anything. They don't fund anything. It is all brand new money. The government creates money every time it spends, and it deletes money every time it taxes. That's the game. That's how it works. And I think that's startling realities, because we only have to tax enough money to keep us needing the dollar. So we could spend more and more and more and more and more. The deficit could grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, and it wouldn't have a damn bit of difference. The difference would be where we spend that money. Are we spending it on the poor? Are we housing people? Are we giving them health care? Are we taking away student debt that's destroying families, an older generation that went back to school during the great financial crisis to reinvent their careers, and all of a sudden they're stuck with $100,000 worth of mounting debt? No, they don't do that. Why? Because if we're in debt, we're slaves of a different color. Now we have to do something, and that's the name of the game, because they serve capital. That's the whole shooting match right there.
So I guess everyone should stop saying that then. That their tax
damn
dollars
right.
are
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
Because, that's why, yeah, because okay. So everyone heard that. We have to stop saying that your tax dollars are funding these things, because they're not.
Yes.
Now,
And let me tell you one beautiful thing real quick, and I'll let you get going. I saw Bree and Jen Perlman talking about this, and I swear my heart about jumped out of my chest when Bree said it on camera. I mean, my God, a woman with a big, huge platform, as eloquent as she is, saying it, and Jen saying it too. Two people that I have a great deal of respect for, speaking truth to power and saying these things. Because why? Sabby, if I'm talking to a Republican, or I'm talking to a MAGA, or I'm talking to a libertarian, and if we can all say, listen, you may not like the government having this power, you may not like the way this works, but this is how it works. If we can agree that that's true, and it is, by the way, but if we can agree to that, think of all the lies that we fight about all day long, that suddenly we could unite as a working class and do some real damage, because we don't want this done in our name. It's not our tax dollars. Nobody's stealing from you to give to them. It's all new money. Think of the game change for bringing us all together. Just that one simple truth. Amazing.
For me, it's like, wow. Because it's just like most of us, we all say it because we all believe it. And then another thing too, if you think about like the budget. So let's get to this whole budget thing, right?
Sure.
One of the phrases I despise the most is when we start talking about these policies that we want. We start talking about universal health care, et cetera. How are you going to pay for it? Like, I hate when people like ask that question because no one asked that question about defense. No one asked how are you going to pay to fund all these wars? Like, no one asked that question, right? They don't mention the bloated defense budget, which is over $860 billion, has continued to increase over the years, but never this high. Like, they don't ask that question. But again, to me, it's just like I always tell people, like, the money is already there. And tell me if I'm wrong on this, because I always say we should reduce the defense budget and then we can pay for some of these things. What do you think about that? Or do you think we can already pay for it now?
We could pay for it either way, right? That's the thing. That's the point. There's no financial constraint. There may be a real resource constraint though. Like, do we have enough labor to absorb that spend? Do we have everybody over here doing, denial of service in the insurance industry when we need people actually creating, high-end, Silicon Valley style, widgets or whatever? I don't know, right? It just depends. So the reality is, at the end of the day, it won't change the ability to spend. You're not saving money. We don't need to ever save money. We create money. There's no such thing. The government never has it. It spends it into existence, right? It's not like it's sitting in a treasure chest waiting to be spent. It's always brand new. It comes to life when they write a law, when it just spends it into existence, literally spends it into existence. So when you think about this, and this is probably the hardest thing for people to get in, and this may be the thing that I'm still dealing with 2 black eyes and a broken nose and a wounded soul over. And that is when I explained that only the federal government has that power, that the state governments don't have that power. The state governments are very similar to you and I and businesses, and they don't have the power to create money. So states are fighting with each other constantly for tax revenue. So like what Texas does to bring jobs to Texas, because they don't have a state income tax, they lure businesses down there and they hire up all the people, but the places that raise taxes lose those businesses, because this is the way it works when it's tax and spend, when it's all about your tax dollars. That's what happens at state and municipal level. So when you think about the federal government having unique powers, and think about this in Europe, it's a very different situation. They're almost exactly like we are in the United States. Each of these countries gave up their power. The Greeks gave up the drachma. The French gave up the franc. The Germans gave up their currency. All of them gave up their currency to adopt the euro. So now they have a non-elected, non-national central bank, the European Central Bank, the ECB, that acts on their behalf. So this is why the UK, you can get mad at them for choosing to leave instead of remain or whatever in that whole thing. I don't know if you remember all that, but the reason they didn't want to give up their monetary sovereignty. They didn't want to give up the British pound. They didn't want to give up their ability to take care of things, but they also didn't want to give up their cultural values or whatever to what they saw. It was a very, very big fight, but it really comes down to the monetary system, right? And so in the United States, when you're talking about debt deficits and all that stuff, the federal government alone has the power to create currency. It doesn't borrow its own currency. Think about how ridiculous that is. Borrowing US dollars from China, borrowing US dollars from England, borrowing who in the world, when you say it out loud, you realize how stupid it is. But you believe it until you actually look in the mirror and say the words, "We're borrowing US dollars from China." What in the world did I just say? So just keep that in mind, that the US government doesn't have any debt. It chooses to sell bonds. It chooses to sell treasury bonds. It doesn't need to. And all treasury bonds are like a form of dollars. I took my money, I bought a treasury bond. Now I have a savings account. That's all it is. It's just basically a savings account that earns its interest. Not a big deal, right? We're not borrowing that money from our grandchildren for future generations are going to be burdened by this. None of that's real. That's all fake. But they're counting on people. And mind you, when I say counting on people's ignorance, I'm not just talking about people, you're not educated. I went and got an MBA. My entire Master of Business Administration taught me everything wrong. Literally, I spent a huge fortune of debt, like real debt that I'm still drowning in, to learn the wrong things. And when I unlearned them, it made me a major advocate to tell everybody. I want everybody to know this. My God, how can you not? You need to know. Oh my God. So, I think it's important that everybody gets to know this, because once we do know this, we're not going to fight about a lot. We're going to start pulling together and uniting in defense of ourselves, in defense of the working class. And I think that's a real game changer.
Well, that brings me to this point, because this question here, I don't know if everyone has seen this, but this is news on the GOP side. Senator Josh Hawley introduces a bill to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. So it says it's unusual move for a Republican, et cetera, et cetera. So I have to say this, Steve, like, once again, like, we know the Democrats tried to do this in a weird way, in a way that we said would probably not work, and it did not work. I want to remind everybody here that it wasn't just Republicans that voted against that $15 minimum wage. There were 7 Democrat senators that voted against it and 1 independent. That also prevent that from happening. But now all of a sudden, now this bill is coming from a Republican, and I would assume that his colleagues in the Republican Party are going to support it. I would assume that, just based on like partisan politics, right? Now, then how do they respond to the optics here? Because Josh Hawley and many others have complained before, we don't have the money, like, we can't do that. Now he's introducing this bill. Like, I don't. And again, even when it comes to the federal, like a federal $15 minimum wage, which it should be higher than that at this point, especially if we adjust for inflation. How do you explain this? Like with MMT, like when they complain and say that we can't do that, we can't pay everybody or can't make the minimum wage $15 an hour. Apparently, Josh Hawley is showing that you can.
Yeah, we could easily do that. The issue is not whether the federal government has nothing to do other than making a law that makes the new minimum wage that amount, right? There's not a lot of federal jobs that are minimum wage federal jobs. I'm sure there's some, but there's not a lot. That's not the predominant job. This is really for private businesses. At the end of the day, they have to carve out the way that they do business, and they have to start paying their workers more. The problem is, and this is a problem, is that because the government is cutting money, cutting spending right now, is literally going berserk, slashing and burning different programs. I mean, my son is autistic, and the federal grants and stuff and federal monies that go to fund the states that support things like that have been radically, hurt big time. So there's a lot of, every spending cut is less money in the economy. Don't even worry about what it was spent on at first. Just consider money in from the government is what allows us to play monopoly in the real world, right? All of us have, if they cut back on that money, then we have far less money. And then the haves start hoarding and they start cutting labor. So the interesting thing here will be, okay, you make this thing, are they going to, because they're not spending more into the economy, are they going to then in turn start laying people off? Because after all, we have to lay people off because we can't afford this onerous $15 an hour, right? So it's not an MMT story in the sense that the government is paying people $15 an hour. They're putting a rule that's cascaded on to private enterprise to in turn say the minimum wage you have to pay is 15. I don't know if that makes any sense, but really, if you want to think about the MMT angle though, if you've choked off the fountainhead from which money comes from, which is the federal government, if you reduce spending and if you slash the military budget without spending something elsewhere, you're creating austerity. You're shrinking the money supply, shrinking the amount of money in the active economy. Okay. it may feel good, it may sound good, it's logical, right? Cut this and blah blah blah, but that's not how it works. It's all new money. So by cutting it without having a spending bill in hand to spend more somewhere else, you're creating austerity, which is going to create recessions. And then you may have $15 an hour for the lucky people that keep their jobs, but the rest of the people, that's when you start seeing mass layoffs. So it's important to understand there's two factors or three factors really involved in that. And I'm curious as to, if they stop spending, businesses are going to respond in kind. If they put an additional cost, which is even a few dollars an hour more for labor, they're going to lay other people off. They're going to be less interested in hiring people because they always have a profit motive. They have a profit target. They have their desires to save too. So it's not good. It's capitalism. And I would end it immediately yesterday if I could. But that right there is what you've got. It's not really an MMT story, but with them cutting spending on one hand and then raising wages on the other, you're now fighting over a pool of money, and the capitalists still don't have, there's no structural changes there that are making them retain employees. There's no structural changes there that actually bring about security for the workers, so they could just lay off as many people as they want, and they will. That's my big fear.
And so, two more things for you, Steve. One,
Sure.
what do you think about ending the Federal Reserve?
It doesn't make a bit of difference to me. I mean, look, this is going to sound weird because we haven't talked in a while, but I just want to say that some of my political analysis has radically changed since we last talked. Okay. First of all, there was a study in 2014 Princeton put out that showed we have no democracy at all, that public opinion has zero impact on policy whatsoever. I think it was Gillens and I can't remember the other name.
Martin Gillens.
Yes. And bottom line is that I don't ever forget that. That never washes out of my brain. That is 100% locked in now. I don't deviate. So I don't believe we have a democracy to begin with. But let's say hypothetically, Sabby, you and I were running the government. We're socialists and we're doing socialist things, and we want to make the world better. And so therefore, we empower workers to own their means of production. We empower workers to make decisions, real, true democratic decisions about what we as a country spend on and stuff. That'd be radically different. The Federal Reserve, it merely is the bank. It doesn't have the ability to create new money unless it is by law, right? So the Federal Reserve creates money according to law, and whatever profits it makes by investing and so forth, it's forced to return those profits back to the Treasury. It's stupid because it just ends up being part of this weird circuit internal to the government circuit, and it gets wonky. And the Fed, bring it into the Treasury. Let everybody start saying, oh no, the Treasury is owned by the Rothschilds. Now the Treasury is owned by the Rothschilds, whatever. It's the same thing. It doesn't make a bit of difference. At the end of the day, it's all undemocratic. There is no democracy. See, I used to think that there was, and I think that egg on my face, as I've really learned, there's always going to be enough votes, quote unquote votes, for this bourgeois democracy that supports capital and capital alone, going back to the founding documents, mind you, landowners, wealthy landowners, not the people out of doors, right? So if you think about that and you maintain that knowledge and you always keep that front and center, does it really matter if the Fed is private or public? Because at the end of the day, it still serves the same master that these folks do. So you think about someone like Thomas Sankara, who had all this IMF debt, and he said, you know what? I can either pay you and it won't make a bit of difference, or I can take care of my people. And, he got killed for that, right? And if you think about in the US, that's the same thing that happens with our government. We send the CIA down to coup somebody. We send our SEAL team in to destroy somebody. We send a drone out there to blow someone up. We send our tankers in. We send our bombs in. So at the end of the day, whether it's in the Treasury or whether it's in the Fed, it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I wouldn't care one way or the other, I guess is the point.
Last one for you, Steve. What do you think about my producer Eric? He started 11 demands, and he, says that real change start with demands. What do you think about 11 demands? Healthcare for all, a minimum standard of living for everyone in the wars, We have a saying on the show, MCDS, money, corruption, demand, solution, follow the money always, call out corruption, have robust demands. Good demands lead to good solutions. And, Eric's idea is that if we could start a movement or something around this, around 11 demands. I think one of the things that we kind of noticed is like some of the things that we've been involved in the past. I know some of the activist things I've been involved in. It almost seems like the demands were lost. Or like if we go back to the George Floyd protests, the demand was defund the police, but then it kind of got away from that because it was co-opted, et cetera. What do you think about that? Do you think we just need a core set of demands and build a movement around that instead of trying to build a movement electorally?
Yeah, I don't believe in electoral politics at all. So I believe that this is closer to the right thing than anything that has to do with voting for people and championing different politicians. I really think that we'll probably find ourselves, the more people that wake up to the lack of democracy that we have, I think that the working class as a whole needs to shed some of those myths, because until we shed the myths of what we think we can do with the government, what we think we can elect these people to do and all, they're going to continue doing it because that's scary to think otherwise, right? You guys, I want to say this, you guys do a lot of really good things that I think are model for what we need to do on a broader scale. Like people say, we need to have a general strike. Well, that's great, but you got to earn a general strike. You think about how hard it is to do the mutual aid you guys already do. What you do, imagine doing that throughout the nation, and not just a little bit, but having legal aid for people to really, really honestly become ungovernable, having healthcare available. When I was a strike captain in the phone company, right, I had to work at Domino's Pizza at night to survive, and I got like a pittance of money from the strike fund. They did not prepare us for a strike. And so what you had was, within a week, you had people that were literally trying to take care of their families crossing the picket line. And you can blame them. You call them scabs. You can call them whatever you want. But at the end of the day, it takes preparation, right? So we're in a phase right now, in my opinion, where we not only need to build parallel systems, but we need to build dual power. And I think your guys' former name, Fred Hampton, I think that we need to take a page out of Fred Hampton's book and really, really, really think about what that looks like, and live parallel from this fake system. This system is, you see that picture of Cuba that they think they're getting you on the capitalist show. Oh, over here's this and over here's the poor. Well, that's what it really is like in America. It has gotten to the point now where these people don't have any idea. And you remember those people laughing as they came out of the DNC when they were talking to them about freaking Gaza, those parasites, these rich elite snobs, these fools, right? But that's their world. And until we realize we're not a part of their world, until we realize that we, the working class, don't have champions over there. And if somebody acts really nice to us kind of for a minute, or one of these guys expresses something that makes us say, well, they're better than the other ones. No, they're not. You're always going to have a parliamentarian there to trip up things. You're going to always have a rotating villain. You're going to always have just enough people to fail, right? And when they do something in your name, it's going to be wrong. Think about what the ACA is. It's a bullshit handout to the insurance companies. It's not healthcare for us. Right. In fact, I think my healthcare has gotten worse since the ACA. Okay. So when you think about what your demands are, I think that is really good. But I think that part of this, and this is really scary, I think, for people, is that we've got to really understand movements. We got to really understand the history of labor. We got to really understand the history of struggle, civil rights struggle, all these struggles, and we got to blend them together, because the struggle of one, an injury to one is an injury to all. That's great union rhetoric. It needs to be great working class rhetoric outside of the union halls, because things are different, right? I mean, I love studying, Russia, and I like looking at the Russian Revolution, but that's not real. I'm not LARPing. I'm not going to sit there and pretend like I'm some, I'm going to use some old English language just so I can prove my socialist chops. It's today. We got to look forward, right? And the material conditions of today are radically different than they were back then. But there's still a lot of good information that we can glean from each of these movements, and we can see how they move the goalposts every time. Yes, we freed the slaves, but now we've made vagrancy laws. Yes, we've done this, but now we've done that. Each of these things. Yes, we've eliminated the ability for slave labor, but when we put you in jail, now we can conscribe you to go ahead and do more labor, right? all these things. We just have to be aware that we are not the target audience for this government. We are slaves of a different breed. We are a different form of slave now. And sometimes we win big and we somehow or another manage to break through with the Bitcoin investment, or we make it through with some other investment. But the reality is we are always othered. We're always not part of that. We're always chasing master's money. In reality, we need to be aware of this and work together. So the 11 demands, I mean, it's as good a start as any. If you can get people rallying around something, anything, as long as it's not fake like our tax dollars, right? As long as we can get radical and really make people pull away from the electoral system and start saying, no, 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 no. I'm going to stop pouring my money into AOC and Bernie. I'm going to stop pouring my energy into Nina Turner, God love her, whatever. But we're not going to keep going back to Chantel just because that's who the party decided. We're not going to go to Hillary because that's it. We're not going to go to Buttigieg. We're going to go ahead and we're going to say, we don't have a dog in this fight. We are the working class, and we are not represented by this. And even if we vote for it, they're not going to give us anything ever, right? So the best thing we can do is put pressure on the system, because what does capital want? Capital wants to keep making more capital. It wants to keep accumulating capital. So we need to make it so that that's difficult. And we need to start getting strategic in what that looks like. But before we do that, we got to have numbers, because think about it. You run into a friggin' machine gun. It may sound good on some notebook somewhere, but in reality, you're dead, right? So we got to be smart, and we got to think about what it takes to pull people together. And I think radicalizing people through MMT, which I talked about, is a great starting point. If you can explain to them that they could literally make you whole, they could wipe out your student debt without a thought. They could literally provide homes for all. But instead, YIMBYs want to go ahead and give handouts to developers and rezone places and get rid of regulations and all this other stuff to produce houses. But in reality, the government, if it wanted that, if it ever wanted that, could literally speak it into existence and make it so. And then what it would do is it would pay those developers to make whatever it is the government said. And if you and I were making those decisions, it would look very, very different, right? Everything would look different. Forget Medicare for all. Let's have a national health service where you don't even pay a payment. You don't do anything. I mean, I talk to Carl Jha all the time, and Carl's like, man, you go to China, you get whatever you want, man. It's like dirt cheap. They don't even, it's not even about, money. It's really about serving the people. We don't have that here. And we need to really grapple with that. And so, 11 demands is better than no demands. And, if it gets people organized and it gets people committed to staying on task, I think that's as good as anything, right?
That's right. All right, Steve Grumbine, thank you so much. Where can people follow you?
Yeah, so I've kind of gotten off the video path for a little while. That'll be coming back soon. But for all intents and purposes, you can catch my podcast, Macro and Cheese. It comes out every Saturday morning on podcasts. It's audio. We don't really do the video thing that much. And then Tuesday nights, we have something called Macro and Chill, where we have a webinar where we teach people this stuff. We allow them to ask questions. We answer them. We provide answers. And it's really, really nice. I hope more will join us, because we're looking to educate. We just want people to learn this stuff so that they can become a rogue strain of truth within their friends and family and different work groups that they're in. And that's really it. You can go to our website, realprogressives.org, and you can also go to our Substack, which is Substack Real Progressives. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much, Sabby. Please, I hope I can have you on sometime. I really, really hope that we can talk more, because I think what you guys are doing is probably the closest thing to what we need to be doing, sans the electoral side. So I really respect what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
You got it. Take care, everybody.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Steve Grumbine. Again, follow him. He's very, very knowledgeable about this stuff. He's been on the show before. And so, guys, you heard that, right? We got to stop saying our tax dollars, So pass that on to other people. That's really important for us to remember. And I'll try to make sure I remember that too, right? Okay. Yes, I know. I saw all of it coming through, guys. Israel has attacked Iran. We're going to go into that story next. I was going to discuss the prepared attack anyway. So we'll go ahead and jump into that story next. Really quick, though, I do want to make sure I get to some of the chats. So let's go ahead and get to that. Thank you, Kami John, for the super chat. Steve Grumbine up in this bish tonight. That dude always brings the real with his righteous anger. This stream is going to be a banger. Much love to the Sabinator for having him on. Thank you. I know we're getting to it. The Oracle said a special report is coming through that Israel has launched an attack on Iran. We're going to get into that. I think I changed the title. Yeah, I changed the title of the stream too with that part too. It just so works out that I was going to be talking about the possibility of that anyway. Thank you, Wandy. IRS and Federal Reserve are private entities. Thank you. Thanks, Roger. He is talking about the federal government doesn't use taxes to pay for things. State, local government do use taxes to pay for things because they're not currency issuers. Thanks, Kevin Wayne. Sabby, that's why I told you to get Steve. Change the convo on spending. Thank you, Roger. Sab, you already knew that. You forgot Dr. Dr. Kaboob. Dr. Kaboob told you. Thank you. It's been a while since I heard from him. I got to reach back out. Thank you, H. Dennis. I spoke to you a while ago about how xenophobic the nationalist FBA ADOS leaders are and receive pushback since Nick is calling them out. Can you publicly disavow their position on the LA protests? So yeah, I've had FBA and ADOS organizers on the show. And when I talked to them on the show, I said I did not agree with the name calling. I did not agree with some of the policy positions. I've already talked about that on the show. I've also talked about the fact that I do understand where they're coming from when they say that you're asking us to organize with people that have been racist towards us in our own communities. So I think it's important that people hear both sides of that, like have conversations with people. I don't go attacking people on Twitter, unless it's like a politician. But other than that, like I have those conversations on the show, and I've brought them on the show to have that discussion. Thank you, Cougar. Sabby, Israel is currently striking Iran's capital, Tehran, for no F reason. What the hell is wrong with us? We're going to get there. Thank you, Afri Culture. Israel just bombed Iran. I know, guys. I know. Thank you, Professor Zinkus. Steve Grumbine knows the deal. Thanks, VA from New York. The national debt is a pretense. The government doesn't need money. It creates it. There you go. Thank you, Fuzzy Balls. The military-industrial complex owns both parties. Until we fix that, no substantive change will ever happen in Wall Street. Thank you, Karina. Says thank you. Thank you, Joe Massino. Edward Dowd and Richard Wolff understand MMT, but they explain it doesn't curb inflation. Next time I have Professor Wolff on, I'm going to ask him about that, about MMT. Thank you, Fuzzy Balls. Ukraine and Israel are part of the same team. Supporting one and opposing the other muddies the waters and does exactly what the war machine wants. And thank you, Jesus. Not tax dollar, public spending from public purse. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you, guys. All right. And we'll get to the comment on Rumble. Thank you, Goo. Mint Press has reported that Israel started the strikes on Iran and Yemen has launched missiles at Israel. Thank you for this one. Israel ended up hitting residential buildings, trying to unalive IRGC commanders at the expense of civilians. Sound familiar? Yes, it does sound familiar. And Psycho Lindsey Graham said on X, game on, pray for Israel. What a lunatic. That guy's fucking crazy. I've told you guys before. Lindsey Graham is insane. And thank you for this one. According to Tehran, Iranian jets are taking off. Okay, let me get to the story. Okay, thanks, Eric. Let me get to the story. I'll get back to the comments. But let's go ahead and get into that because I know everybody's like, let's get in there. Okay. Again, the theme tonight is the awful truth. So we are going to start off with, we have breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Israel strikes Iran. Now, I was going to start this conversation with the possibility because they were getting prepared to strike Iran. And it just so happens that it happens while I'm live. Let's go ahead and get into this breaking news here from CNN. This is absolutely insane and very dangerous. Israel launches preemptive strikes against Iran, defense minister says. Let's go ahead and get into this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to slide down here. Israel has launched what it calls preemptive strikes against Iran, and a state of emergency has been declared in Israel, according to the country's defense minister, Israel Katz. Following the state of Israel's preemptive strike against Iran, a missile and drone attack against the state of Israel and its civilian population is expected in the immediate future. Did everybody hear this? Let's highlight this. This is nothing to mess around with. Following the state of Israel's preemptive strike against Iran, a missile and drone attack against the state of Israel and its civilian population is expected in the immediate future. Ladies and gentlemen, Iran is not playing around. This is not a game. This is not a joke. And what Israel is trying to do, they know they can't beat Iran without the United States. So they decide to act on their own accord. Now, according to President Trump, he said he had a conversation with Netanyahu and told him not to attack Iran, at least for now, was what he said. I don't even know if I believe that or not. Regardless, this is what Israel wanted. They wanted to push the U.S. into a war with Iran. Now, this is all a part of the greater Israel project. I told you, it is not just about Gaza, as much as they want to point fingers at the Palestinians there. It's not just about the West Bank. It's not just about Syria. It's not just about Lebanon. It's also about Iran. Don't forget when Netanyahu came to Congress. In this speech that he made, he said that this is about the greater Israel. And he showed a map with the current map as it is with Iran there. And he described that as the curse. And without them, he described that as the blessing. This is a part of the greater Israel project. Now, you're going to hear a couple of things tonight because there have already been reports prior to this strike from Israel on Iran that Iran was not following the nuclear protocol. I just want to give you the alarm about that because they were setting you up for this strike. They were setting you up for this attack. Corporate media was already trying to get the message out to the American people that Iran was not following the rules. And so therefore, the strike that is coming from Israel will be justified. That is exactly what they want you to believe. I'm here to tell you, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Israel knows that Iran is going to respond. And it won't just be Iran. It will also be Yemen. So Israel is trying to fight Iran and also trying to fight Ansar Allah in Yemen. They can't beat them. So this is where the United States government comes in, right? This is where they push Donald Trump and say, we need you to send U.S. troops to the Middle East to help us fight. And that will be the big, big world war. Because here's the thing. Iran, I don't think is going to go down. And then also, they're going to, if they were to go down, they're not going to go down without a fight. They're not going to go down without a fight. You also got to think about Russia. You also have to think about, China. This is what Israel wants. And you're going to see that when you hear that clip from Jeffrey Sachs. He was warning people what Israel was trying to do. Iranian state media outlet IRNA reported repeated explosions could be heard in Tehran. Now, that is Iran's capital, Tehran. You guys have seen Professor Morandi. He's been on this show multiple times. He teaches at the university in Tehran. This is absolutely insane. Israel is dragging the United States into a world war. World War III. This is what Netanyahu wants. I can take you back to Iraq, ladies and gentlemen. This is not new. Why do you think we went to war with Iraq? And they had to get the American people behind it. So they told you that there were weapons of mass destruction. And people bought into it. Years later, we found out that that was a lie. And so I'm warning you right now. I'm warning you. Be very wary of the message that is coming from corporate media about Iran right now. They are going to try to brainwash you the same way that they did about Iraq. This is absolutely insane. They lied to you before. You don't think that they would not lie to you again? Now we have video coming in. Let me just make sure that this doesn't show the actual strike, because we have to be careful about that on YouTube. I think this is just smoke. I just want to double check. Yeah, it's just smoke. We just smoke, Eric. It's just smoke. Okay. So here it is. Let me get past that part. Tehran. Let's bring this in. This is insane. There's the smoke. Oh my God, you guys. Oh my God. This is insane. This is insane. Like, they bombed their capital. They bombed their capital. Okay. We have another video here. Let's go ahead and get into this one. This one you said is okay, Eric? Let's bring it in.
We are getting breaking news out of Iran at the moment. Explosions have been heard in the capital, Tehran. At least 6 explosions have been heard. There were reports in US media that Israel is preparing to strike Iran. Israel has declared a state of emergency with a ban on gatherings. And we will bring you more information as it becomes available. But just a few more breaking news lines I can bring you. The Israeli Defense Minister has imposed a special state of emergency, as we were hearing there. That is in place immediately. Israeli radio is declaring that a state of emergency has been declared across all of Israel that will ban gatherings and the suspension of studies at all institutions. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu is currently chairing an extraordinary meeting of the cabinet and the security mini cabinet. And this is in the context of rising tensions over the last few weeks between Iran and Israel. US President Donald Trump's comments recently have added to that sense of conflict as well, saying on Thursday that a strike could very well happen. These are the latest pictures from Tehran.
Let me pause here for just a second. So again, Donald Trump did say that, well, we'll see what happens. A strike could possibly happen. But again, like, here's what I want you guys to understand. If the US was vehemently against this, do you guys think that Israel would strike Iran if they knew that the United States government wasn't going to have their back? Do you think that they would take this risk if they knew that the US government, wasn't going to stand by them? They know the US government is going to continue to give them weapons. They know if need be, if they ask for US soldiers, they'll be there. Again, when we look back on the war in Iraq, Benjamin Netanyahu was a big driver of that war. Us bringing US troops to Iraq. I think about all the people that died, all the soldiers that died. Think about all the civilians that died. Think about this in your mind. And this is why it's really, really, really scary. I don't think that some people are aware. I mean, of course, you guys know, but I don't think that some people are aware of how Iran is going to respond. And that's exactly what Israel wants. They want them to respond. Israel is like a bully. They're punching the kid on the playground over and over. And then finally, when the kid turns around and punches them back, they point their fingers at the kid and say, "You started it." It's the same thing with October 7th. We talked about this before. No, it didn't start on October 7th. It's been happening for decades. It was Israel, the creation of the state of Israel, pushing the people out of their home that started all of this. This is exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu wanted. And I really feel like part of this is to try to, rebuild his legacy or whatever. We'll get into that. Because there's a couple of things happening with some of the Israeli soldiers that don't want any part in this now. This is insane. And now just watch, wait for it. Come tomorrow, take a peek at corporate media and watch how they discuss this. I'm pretty sure they'll find a way to blame it all on Iran. Pretty sure they'll find a way to do so. The United States government doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, but it's okay for the countries around them to have a nuclear weapon. So what is Iran supposed to do? Leave itself vulnerable? Let's continue.
You're seeing now of those explosions, and we do have Tawhid Asadi joining us on the phone from Tehran. Tawhid, what more can you tell us about what is going on there in Tehran?
Well, it's about 3:46 local time here in Tehran, and based on what we have so far, sounds of several explosions have been heard across the capital, not necessarily at one particular point, and there are several of them. One of them was heard, and I personally heard that around 5-6 minutes ago. Another one was heard just in the heart of the capital around half an hour ago, and I can say that we've got at least 6-7 minimum explosion sounds reported to be heard in the city, in different parts of the city, western parts, the southern parts of the city. But still, we know that the state TV has confirmed the happening of these explosions. But when it comes to the cause, so far we haven't officially heard anything from Iranian sources. And right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are footages, there are pictures coming from different parts of the city, including Chitgar part, including a neighborhood in the western part of the capital. We see smokes coming out from certain parts of the city. That's obviously could not be an accident, as we are hearing reports coming from the Israeli side saying that they have announced an emergency situation, meaning that there is going to be a possibility, a very strong possibility for them to be involved. We heard the statements from the Israeli defense minister and also the Israeli radio saying that the army, the air forces are said to be involved in this situation. And we know that so far the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is currently chairing an extraordinary meeting of the cabinet and the security mini cabinet, and that means a sort of systematic initiation or a serious situation that we are experiencing right now.
I just have to say, to go after the capital, that is absolutely insane. But this is what happens when you don't hold Israel accountable. They haven't been held accountable for anything. They haven't been held accountable for getting on the Freedom Flotilla Madeline boat and kidnapping those activists and firing chemicals onto that boat. They weren't held accountable. They haven't been held accountable for a genocide. They weren't held accountable for attacking civilians in Lebanon. They weren't held accountable for attacking civilians in Syria. There has been no accountability to Israel. Even when South Africa brought them to the ICJ, there was no accountability. The message was, you need to try to do everything you can to prevent a genocide from happening. Let me be very clear. All world leaders are a part of this. They all know what Israel is. They all know what Israel has become. And every single one of them have supported them, not just financially, whether it's with weapons, whether it's with money. They have supported them along the way. They didn't get here alone. The entire international community has to turn its back on Israel. And corporate media has, over the years, tried to find a way to make you afraid of Iran and to criticize them and to make them seem like the boogeyman. So then when this day would come where Israel would attack them, you would say, oh, it's justified. They've been doing this for years. I know. They did it to me when I was a kid. How many of you remember when you were growing up as a kid, corporate media and other forms of media, and even other people tried to brainwash you and convince you that everybody in the Middle East was the problem and Israel was the solution? How many of you? I still remember them saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Think of how many of us believed it. We're dealing with decades and decades of propaganda. Now, Gaza was different. Gaza was different. We saw genocide basically live stream. I don't know if everybody's going to feel the same way about Iran. I don't know if everyone that supports Gaza has that same type of understanding for Iran. And if that's the case, we may have more work to do. We may have more work to do. And that's what bothers me. I think we have another video here coming from Al Jazeera. Thank you so much, Eric, for this. This is Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, coming in. Or Eric's getting the video ready there. This is absolutely insane. And who does this, man? Who does this? And they know they're going to need U.S. troops. They know they're going to need U.S. soldiers to help them. Israel can't beat Iran by itself. They can't. Marco says Iran is prepping the hypersonic arsenal, I bet. Listen, guys, this is not a joke. This is not a game. And do we have that video ready, Eric? I didn't know if that was ready or not. Okay. I think we have more news here. Was he speaking earlier? I think I saw a part where he was speaking. Okay.
100% prepared. And we heard this line from the United States saying that some U.S. officials are saying the United States has got no engagement in this new attack. And one of the latest lines that is coming out is relates to a statement that
Israel, the small Satan. It calls America the great Satan. And this is why for decades, it's led millions in the chance of death to Israel and death to America. Today, Israel is responding to those genocidal calls with action and with a call of our own. Long live Israel and long.
He has some audacity talking about genocidal calls. Are you serious? He has some audacity talking about genocidal calls when he's been committing a genocide.
Long live America. Our action will help make the world a much safer place. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in confronting Iran's nuclear weapons program. He has made clear time and again that Iran cannot have a nuclear enrichment program. Today, it is clear that Iran is just buying for time. It refuses to agree to this basic requirement of peaceful nations. That is why we have no choice but to act, and act now. The hardest decision any leader has to make is to thwart a danger before it is fully materialized. Nearly a century ago, facing the Nazis, a generation of leaders failed to act in time. They were paralyzed by the horrors of World War I. They were determined to avoid war at all costs, and they got the worst war ever. They adopted a policy of appeasement. They closed their eyes and ears to all the warning signs. That failure to act resulted in World War II, the deadliest war in history.
And you're about to take us into World War III. Do you see what is happening here, ladies and gentlemen? This is where the guilt comes in. Let's try to make the American people feel guilty. No. You just attacked Iran's capital. You just attacked Iran's capital. What did Iran do to you? Last time I checked, you are not under occupation by Iran. You are not being oppressed by Iran. I also want to remind everybody, because Netanyahu's probably not going to tell you this. Don't forget that Iran does have a pretty large Jewish population. Max Blumenthal was just there. He was just there.
It claimed the lives of 60 million, including 6 million Jews, a third of my people. After that war, the Jewish people and the Jewish state vowed never again. Well, never again is now. Today, Israel has shown that we have learned the lessons of history. When enemies vow to destroy you, believe them. When enemies build weapons of mass death, stop them. As the Bible teaches us, when someone comes to kill you, rise and act first. This is exactly what Israel has done today. We have risen like lions to defend ourselves. Over 3,000 years ago, Moses gave the people of Israel a message that has steeled their resolve ever since. Be strong and courageous, he said. Today, our strong and courageous soldiers and people stand together to defend ourselves against those who seek our destruction. And by defending ourselves, we defend many others, and we roll back a murderous tyranny. Generations from now, history will record that our generation stood its ground, acted in time, and secured our common future. May God bless Israel. May God bless the forces of civilization everywhere. Thank you.
Israel.
God is I don't think God is blessing that type of behavior. It was interesting to me that he brought up the Bible, you know, because in the Bible, as someone who did grow up in the church, the Bible tells you, I don't know how many times, that just how sacred children are and how we should love and respect each other. There's Old Testament and the New Testament. And I think one of the things we need to continue to push back on, especially if you did grow up in the church and you know better, this whole like Zionist talking point that the land is supposed to be for them, that is not what the Bible says. That is a Zionist talking point. And all of you that grew up in the church, you really need to push back on that. I explained this a couple of nights ago. There's a difference between the physical land and the spiritual embodiment. Zionism took that and used that to encompass physical land that was already occupied by people. And I got to start asking this question. Are more people going to push back on this in the religious sense? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't say love and respect everyone, love thy neighbor, and also we have to get rid of thy neighbor. You can't have it both ways. And the Jesus that I read about in the Bible, as someone who has read the whole Bible, the Jesus that I read about in the Bible was welcoming to everyone. Everyone. Come as you are. What Israel has become is an oppressor and an occupier. That's not what the Bible talks about. I keep hearing people try to spin these verses just to give Israel cred for them to continue their genocidal project. Now, you make something make sense to me. How is it that in less than 2 years, you are fighting, killing children, women and children in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Syria, and Lebanon, and now you're killing people in Tehran? You attacked Iran's capital. And everybody wake up. Everybody wake up. This is Benjamin Netanyahu trying to drag the U.S. into another war to protect Israel. How many more American people, more American troops have to die to save this guy in this created state of supremacy and racism? No, we don't stand for that. And as someone who did grow up in the church, I can tell you again, you don't stand with that type of behavior. You don't. There's no going back on that. For Black people who are watching, I'm talking specifically to the Black church. We know what that's like. We've been on the other side. How could you stand with someone who wants to do this to another group of people? You cannot. You can't have it both ways. You can't say it's okay to oppress one group, but not to oppress the other. You can't have it that way. One thing I want to show, again, I keep pointing out Benjamin Netanyahu. I keep bringing it back to him. And I bring it back to him because Jeffrey Sachs, he gave the warning. He was on Tucker Carlson recently. If you have not heard this, listen to who dragged us into these things. Listen to this.
Peace. We want to win. We want all the territory. We don't accept two states. We don't accept Palestinian rights and so forth. We will win, but we don't win by defeating militant groups. We win by destroying the governments that support those groups. And that means war. And it really means endless wars. And the U.S. became the complicit party to this because of the U.S. deep state vision of that Israel is our battleship or aircraft carrier in the Middle East, that it is our strategic asset in the Middle East, and because of the Zionist lobby, which is itself a complicated political concoction in the United States. But in any event, the U.S. completely bought into the Netanyahu idea, which is war after war after war. And it's not well understood, but it should be, because we've been told pretty clearly by no less than General Wesley Clark, for example, who was the commander of NATO forces, that the Pentagon has had a list of wars to prosecute that essentially is Netanyahu's list, actually. After 9/11 in particular, that went into overdrive. The U.S., as Wesley Clark was told, and as he subsequently explained to us, and as others have also explained to us, an Air Force commander named Dennis Fritz, who wrote a very important book called Deadly Betrayal in 2024, telling the same story in essence. The Pentagon had a list which the neoconservatives or the deep state of the U.S. would carry out, which was we would take out the regimes in opposition to Israel. And those regimes included, it's a long list. Of course, not only the Palestinians, that's the point, but also Syria. That was the regime of Bashar al-Assad, which was viewed by Netanyahu and by the U.S. Deep state as an Iranian client. So Syria would be one. Lebanon would be another. Iraq under Saddam Hussein would be another. The Iranian regime would be a fourth. And then, believe it or not, three countries in Africa, which are Islamic countries that supported the Palestinian cause. And that was Muammar Gaddafi's Libya. That was Somalia on the Horn of Africa. And that was Sudan.
So does everybody see what has been driving all of these wars, these conflicts over in the Middle East? The U.S. government has basically been taking orders from Israel to go after these regimes. So the U.S. government couldn't just say, let's just go to war with Iraq. They had to give you a reason. So, I know. Let's say that he has weapons of mass destruction, which wasn't true. And they knew it wasn't true at the time. They knew it wasn't true at the time, which means that they sent U.S. soldiers over there to die for Israel, knowing that Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. That is sick. That is disgusting. And that's what our government did. Now, there's one more thing here that Jeffrey Sachs says. I want to bring this up as well. Let me go back to that clip there. Yeah, another part here with Tucker Carlson. Listen to this part.
Which was a Sharia state in the 1990s. Well, God damn, we've been to war with all of them except Iran, and not by accident. The list is literally the guide in this case. And again, it's not simple for Americans to connect the dots because these stories are not told, they're not explained, they're not debated, they're not voted. These are presidential actions by and large, one after another. So let's go through them step by step.
And then he gets into that. Check out that interview when you get a chance. That's who the U.S. government has been answering to. This is the awful truth, ladies and gentlemen. The awful truth. Israel cannot beat Iran on its own. In order for that to happen, they're going to need the U.S. government to step in with them. Now, there are some people who voted for Donald Trump because they believe that he was going to bring about peace. And if you pay close attention, all you see is escalation since then. Now, don't get me wrong. All of this started under Biden and even somewhat before Biden, right? But the genocide started under Biden. Russia, Ukraine started under Biden. But Trump ran on this. We're going to end it. We're going to bring about peace. And there are people in particular that told me to my face that they voted for him because of that reason. And now look at everything that has been happening since January. More escalation, whether it's Gaza, whether it's West Bank, Syria, Lebanon. Syria is not talked about as much as it used to be. But you see now that you see where we're headed. You see where we're headed. Israel is insane. It's a freaking monster. And they are willing to allow Americans to die for their cause. Is everybody okay with that? Danny Haifong, so well said. Iran is not the problem. Israel and Washington are the problems. They lie about Iran's nuclear program and pursue war based on a non-existent threat. But Iran is far more powerful than Yemen, which neither U.S. nor Israel could defeat. This won't end well for D.C. and Israel. And that is something that we all got to think about, ladies and gentlemen. Again, they don't want to admit that. They don't want you to know that. But here we are. And then there's something else I think that people need to see that happened. Did you know that an ex-CIA analyst who admitted to leaking docs about Israeli strike on Iran, he got sentenced to 37 months in prison? This also happened. See, all the pieces are starting to fit together here, ladies and gentlemen. Ex-CIA analyst was sentenced to more than 3 years in prison on Wednesday for leaking top secret documents about Israel's plans to retaliate against Iran last year. So do you see how everybody has turned on Israel? Everybody has turned on Israel. That's him right there. This guy was CIA. He turned on Israel. He was willing to go to jail for turning on them and telling the truth. Even some of Israel's own soldiers are turning on Israel. We'll get to this breaking news here as well in just a second. As you can see, a lot of people don't know about this. 41 Israeli soldiers renounced military service, called genocidal attacks in Gaza Netanyahu's survival war. This story didn't get a lot of attention, but as you can see, People are starting to turn. I think we have a statement from Marco Rubio, if we can go ahead and bring that in as well. I believe, from what I understand, Marco Rubio is trying to say the U.S. had nothing to do with this. Psh. Let's see. U.S. regime attacks Iran via Israel, confessed by Marco Rubio. So this is the opposite. So check this out. Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran. So again, listen to this, guys. Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran. And our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. So you see what's happening here, right? This is the White House coming forward now, trying to, let me go ahead and put out a statement so that Iran doesn't strike those bases, because I think, don't we have the map up here? I have the map up here of the bases. Check this out. Right here. Breaking: if Iran warns, if war breaks out, not a single U.S. base will remain. You see all the bases that we have around Iran? All the bases here in the Middle East, near Syria, Iraq, and look at that. It's almost like, again, policing the world, all those U.S. bases. This is why Donald Trump told Benjamin Netanyahu, don't attack Iran right now. Notice he didn't say don't attack them in the future. He said just right now, because they would have to evacuate those bases. That's a lot of military bases there surrounding Iran. You think, honestly, at this point, Iran warned the United States, U.S. was on high alert, and they warned them that this is not off limits at this point. If Israel attacks, this is why I told you it was absolutely insane for Israel to strike Iran. All of these bases that you see right here are at risk. Now, from what I understand, I believe they were able to get some people out of the bases in Kuwait, but they ain't get everybody out. That's a lot of bases. They didn't evacuate everyone. All of them are at risk now. And it's another thing to say, this is why we should not have bases all over the world. Why are we even there? This is very dangerous. Like I said, you guys know Iran is going to respond. You don't know when, but you know they're going to respond. And for Marco Rubio to say we didn't have anything to do with this, I don't believe it. I don't believe that they didn't have anything to do with this. I believe that they were briefed before this strike happened. They're not going to necessarily tell you that. This is to save face. I think that's what Marco Rubio is trying to do right now. He's trying to save face. One more part here from Jeffrey Sachs that he brought up.
A really, really big deal. I just want to go back and linger for a second on why.
Why?
Yeah, why? I mean, it was sort of a non sequitur. All of a sudden, Obama stands up and is like, Assad must go. Assad who? Why do we care about Assad?
Syria's on the list. It's Iranian influence. We got to take out Assad.
So it's purely for Israel, you're saying?
I think very substantially. I'll tell you again, Dennis Fritz, very interesting. He's a very smart former Air Force commander who, strangely enough, resigned from the Air Force in 2003 because he couldn't get a clear explanation of why we were fighting Iraq. And he's a very nice man. And he said, I can't lead my troops if I can't explain. And he was told from above, well, because we have the orders to. This order came from the White House. Do it.
Yeah.
And so he said, I can't lead troops under these circumstances. So he resigned. Then he was called back in 2005 to the Pentagon for a remarkable reason. And that was that Douglas Feith, who was a senior Pentagon official, a neocon close to Netanyahu, the whole shebang, said, we want to declassify papers around the Iraq War. And
there you go.
Okay, so Feith came back because he was an expert on classification and security issues and so forth. Why did Feith want to do that? Because he was writing his memoirs. And so he
Crazy stuff there, folks. Crazy stuff there. But as you can see, again, Israel wanted to bring us into these wars. My big question right now is I'm wondering about Professor Morandi. I'm not sure if Eric follows him. I think we're logged into Eric's. Let me see if I can find him on here. What time is it in Iran right now? They're like, I think 9.5 hours ahead. We're going to go to Professor Morandi's Twitter. Let me see if he posted anything. Did he say anything? He did. Okay. He said, Western media, I can't show the video because I don't know what's on it. Western media has spent over 20 months justifying the Gaza Holocaust. They defend genocidal airstrikes on Lebanese and Yemeni civilians. They will also justify murdering of Iranian children. Yeah, I can't show I'm sorry, I can't show the picture on here, but yeah, I'm already seeing pictures of children killed in Iran. For Israel to sit up there and to strike, and that's the thing that really drives me crazy. They strike the capital, Tehran. Now, here's something else I want to bring to your attention, because as I said, this is not a freaking joke. This is not a joke. Before Israel struck Iran, there was a warning that was sounded. It said, U.S. fears Iran's response to Israeli strike would be a mass casualty event. And that would be correct. It says here that White House envoy Steve Witkoff privately warned top Senate Republicans last week that Iran could unleash a mass casualty response if Israel bombs their nuclear facilities, according to a U.S. official and a source with direct knowledge. All those bases there. Again, all of those bases. And as we've said before, they know that they can't win. They know they can't win or even have a chance at beating Iran without the U.S. So I caution all of you, if you know people, if you have family members that are in the military, they call them, warn them about this. We can't have another Afghanistan. We can't have another Iraq war. And that's what Israel's trying to drag the U.S. into. And as much as Marco Rubio and Donald Trump want to say they didn't know anything about, I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. Because Israel had already announced the other day that they were prepped and ready to strike Iran. That wasn't a secret. And we just have to make sure we watch for the media coverage, the way the media is going to cover the way that Iran responds. But you can't sit up here, and for people who are not sure, here's the thing. You can't expect Iran to say, okay, everybody, all these people around me can have nuclear weapons, but we're just not going to have any, and leave themselves vulnerable, right? I don't think there should be any nuclear weapons. That should have never happened. No country should have a nuclear weapon, but they do. And you have Iran in the Middle East, and you have Israel, who wants Iran completely wiped off the freaking map. They called them the curse. And you're telling them, well, no, they cannot have a nuclear weapon. All these excuses for Israel is absolutely ridiculous. They give them so many exceptions. And I'm supposed to believe that you're oppressed? You're not oppressed. You're an occupier. You're a colonizer. You came to Palestine, you pushed people out of their home, you put them in these open air prisons, and we're supposed to feel sorry for you? Israel is terrorizing the world. The world. And we have to like seriously, I would think at this point, if these other Western allies were smart, I would think at this point that the UK, France, Spain, all the rest of them, they need to totally back away from the US on this one and say, nah, bruh, this isn't right. This is the wrong direction. Wrong direction to go. So I will say this again. The problem is not Iran. The problem was not Gaza. The problem wasn't the Palestinians in the West Bank. The problem was not Syria. The problem was not Lebanon. There is one common denominator in every one of these situations, and that's Israel. I can't even believe we're here. I can't believe we're here at this point. And the awful truth is that they can't beat Iran. The awful truth as well is that we could be entering World War III. Over the next couple of days, Google and pay attention to the oil prices, because I noticed the other day there was a big surge the moment that Israel announced that they're prepared to strike Iran. Pay attention to the oil prices. If you thought things were high when Russia and Ukraine started their war, things are about to get high again. Oh no, I feel so helpless. I feel helpless. I need to reach back out to Professor Morandi. We need to try to bring him back on. I feel so helpless, but I got to tell you guys, like we can't give up. We can't give up. I do have other stories I'm going to cover tonight, and we also have call in tonight after the show. So I'm pretty sure people are going to want to talk about this. So we'll get into that as well. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash the like button. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and go to the comments, and then we'll go to the next story. I still have another breaking news story, and this is also crazy. We have to talk about what happened to that Boeing jet in India, right? Let's get to some of these comments. I know I talked for a long time about that story, but I'm sorry, you guys. We got to cover that in its full extent. Thank you, Diamond. The truth will set us free. Thank you, Dwayne. We should all call him Naziyahu from now on. Thank you, Hanging with Dr. Sari, for the super sticker. Thank you, Covert White Rabbit. What happened to Blessed Are the Peacemakers? I know, right? Thanks, Matt. Sabby and Eric, peace be with you. I am awake. FM said, you're right. You can't have it both ways. Thank you, Kevin. Romans 12:18, as much is possible with you, be at peace with all. Thanks, Tuxedo. If you're a soldier in the American military, are you really about to go die for Israel? Where are they finding these soldiers? Well, they're probably people that were already enlisted. I mean, if you're already enlisted, you know, I don't know what the rules are now. Like I said, like my parents were in the military a long time ago. So I don't know how it is today. Like if you can just leave or if you have to finish I don't know how it is. But a lot of times there are people who are already enlisted. Thank you, Stephen. 31-year-old black male. I had hoped he was different. I had hoped he was different. 31-year-old. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Trump, Biden, or Harris, they would have did this. Puppets for Israel. Breaking free from Israel needs to happen ASAP. I agree with you, Paul. I believe that as well. I think regardless if it was Kamala, Biden, or Trump, this still would have happened because they back Israel. Thank you, Tuxedo. Samson option incoming. Thanks, Sam. When Assad was overthrown, this was a happy day for Israel because after destroying the Syrian air defense, they had a straight line to Iran. Yep. Thanks, Todd. U.S. oil just jumped almost 7% a barrel. Here is some gas money. Oh, thank you, Todd. Thank you. I hate getting gas anyway. But I got to get to this story, this breaking news story about this Boeing jet. This shit is crazy. Okay. You know, there were 2 whistleblowers for Boeing, and they tried to warn people that Boeing was obviously pushing through production on these planes in a speedy manner that was going to be dangerous to passengers alike. Both of those whistleblowers wound up dead. Imagine that. Surprise, surprise, right? While they were testifying against Boeing. Then, early Thursday, Boeing 787 crashed in India. Let's bring it in. It was breaking news.
Lee, we're going to start with some breaking news out of India as new details are emerging about that devastating plane crash. Local media there now reporting at least 1 passenger survived after an Air India flight bound for London crashed just after takeoff. In all, we're told more than 240 people were on board. That plane went down in a city in northwest India. Chilling video captured the moment it happened, but we want to warn you, the footage, it is difficult to watch. You can see the plane here flying low over a neighborhood before exploding into a ball of fire and black smoke. Authorities say it crashed in a residential area that was near a medical school. Parts of the aircraft's damaged tail seen here sticking out of the side of a building. Investigators now searching through piles of twisted metal and debris, looking for possible clues into what might have caused this latest disaster involving a Boeing jet. NBC's Matt Bodner is live at London Gatwick Airport, where that flight was ultimately headed. Matt, what more can you tell us about this reported survivor, the only one? Bring us up to speed on the investigation so far.
Before we get to the one survivor, I think we can answer this question for Matt, okay? Again, there were whistleblowers that warned people earlier on that Boeing was skipping, production procedures to get these planes quickly off the ground. Now, whatever job that you have had in your life, I think you guys know, like there's certain procedures that you have to follow for certain things. Am I wrong or am I right? And there is a possibility that if you skip over some of these steps, there's a safety hazard. Something could go wrong. Well, Boeing was skipping over procedures that were deemed to be safety hazards. And one of the whistleblowers, I think the first one that came forward, he was the one that warned people that if Boeing went unchecked, the 787 in the future would crash. And here we are. It's a Boeing 787. He warned people. I am curious to hear about this one survivor, though. I'm curious to know just how much he remembers what happened before that plane went down. There is a possibility that maybe it was a pilot error, but I don't know. Boeing has been having way too many problems for me to believe that at this point in time. All of those people died. And I think we need to start asking ourselves, big business, companies, money, capitalism, it's gotten to the point where they don't even care about human life. Everything's just about profit. Push the manufacturing, push the product, get it out there. We got to sell, sell, sell. Everything's about that now.
Thank you, Ellison. Well, watching those videos, this is a remarkable development, but we understand now there is at least one confirmed survivor, a British national. His name does cross-reference with the passenger manifest. NBC News has checked, and our international partners at Sky News have actually confirmed with his family that he was on the plane and he did survive the crash. His name is Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, and he was, as we understand, traveling with a family member, and the family has not made contact with that second family member. But it does appear that he has been speaking to the local Indian media, the Hindustan Times, for example, citing a 40-year-old man of the same name, showing a ticket, describing the incident from his point of view, saying, quote, 30 seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise and then the plane crashed. It all happened so quickly. He is being treated for impact injuries on his chest, eyes.
Pause. 30 seconds after. Let's go back a little bit more. This part is important for people who are asking, is it a pilot error?
Crashed. It all happened so quickly. He is being treated for impact injuries on his chest, eyes, and feet. Describing the incident from his point of view, saying, quote, 30 seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise and then the plane crashed. It all happened so quickly.
30 seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise and then the plane crashed. That doesn't sound like that was pilot error. That sounds like there was probably something wrong with maybe one of the engines. I don't know. I don't fly planes, but 30 seconds is pretty quick time. I mean, come on. What else could have happened? We were warned about this.
He is being treated for impact injuries on his chest, eyes, and feet. This is developing right now. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more from him, Allison. As for the investigation, we're, of course, at a very early stage in a very catastrophic crash with a modern airliner. There's so many questions about this. One interesting thing that we're starting to see online, including with aviation experts that we talk to, from at least one angle on those videos, it does appear that the flaps on the wings were retracted. That said, we don't know, and the authorities have not yet started narrowing down possibilities for what actually caused this, but a lot of speculation, Allison.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, to that effect, knowing that whenever we have a situation like this, a lot of news and details will come out in the days and weeks ahead. Things can certainly change, but based on where things are right now, this is said to be the first crash for a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner. But Boeing, I mean, they have had a lot of issues of late. So talk to us, if you can, about the safety record for Air India. And in terms of the crash investigation here, is there any chance we could see U.S. investigators getting involved?
Sure thing. Well, just first things first on the idea of U.S. investigators. It's not uncommon for U.S. investigators to go join international investigations, particularly when an American aircraft like a Boeing is involved. So we'll see if it moves in that direction. But as for Air India, the airline has a very high level of safety standards. Its safety record is really good. They haven't had a major incident in 30 years. And if you look at the incidents that were taking place on Air India back in the 80s, 30 years ago, they were terrorism related. So this is surprising, Allison.
NBC.
Did everyone catch what he just said there at the very end? I really wanted to make sure you heard that part, that he said the incident that they had 30 years ago, it was, terrorism related. Do you guys see what they're trying to prepare you for? You see what they're trying to get you ready for? Look, here's the awful truth, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to Boeing, right? Again, we have to realize the number of crashes that have happened with Boeing is just ridiculous. And sometimes it's one right after another. Now, there was investigation into Boeing, and it just so happens that the two key whistleblowers that seem to know a lot of information, all of a sudden, both of them one day show up dead. Now, we can put the pieces together, ladies and gentlemen. Who's pushing these planes out like this? Who's doing this, right? Because you see, a lot of times with production, you have like a turnaround time and you have a certain date that you need to get certain parts out. You need to get those planes out, etc. And I think it seems like to me, listening to one of the other whistleblowers in the beginning, it seems like what's been happening is that they were trying to skip all these different processes so that they can meet those dates. This is what happens in a capitalist system. We'll get into a little bit more here about that one survivor.
Local police are now saying at least one passenger on board the Air India flight survived, incredibly. The newspaper Hindustan Times quotes the man as a British national, saying he heard a loud noise 30 seconds after takeoff. At least 290 people have died, according to Reuters. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was bound for London when it went down in a residential area near the Ahmedabad airport. We want to warn you, the video you're about to see, you may find disturbing. You can see the plane struggling to stay airborne. Then
right there. And if you didn't know that this was during takeoff, you would have probably assumed that this plane was trying to land. But this was during the takeoff. Let's go forward a little bit here. I'm not going to show you the actual crash. Here we go.
Plane lodged in a building of the huge fires. We thought it would only be a miracle if someone survived, and now that miracle seems to have happened. One man, passenger seat 11A, found in hospital by reporters. But there is also a tragedy in this, Max. He says his brother was also on board that plane. He doesn't know his fate. We've also received the latest death toll from a local police official who says that there is 294 people feared dead. That means that there are many more people who died on the ground, in addition, of course, to the nearly 240 souls on board.
I'm just wondering how this guy survived. I'm wondering how this guy made it. Because, like, again, one lone survivor. You know what it reminds me of? Did you ever see that movie with Bruce Willis called Unbreakable? Remember there was that in the movie Unbreakable, there was the train crash and Bruce Willis's character was the one lone survivor. That's what it kind of reminds me of. Now, I'm not saying this gentleman has magical powers, but it just first thing I thought of when I heard this.
That flight. This is a very global tragedy, of course. You had more than 50 nationals from the UK, several nationals from Portugal, and a national from Canada, in addition to more than 160 Indian nationals. So you're absolutely seeing this global response take place, starting, of course, with India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, who says he has deployed his top officials on the ground to provide that help and support. Air India has been setting up hotlines and help desks to respond to the questions of families who I'm sure right now are going through.
Guest's name? Sorry.
Who I'm sure right now are going through a roller coaster of emotion from hearing, of course, this news of the one miracle survivor. Now, for those families, again, seeking answers, this will begin to give them more questions, as the airline CEO had given a press conference a short time ago, Max, alluding to some passengers who were injured making it to hospital. Now, you're looking also at the image of the plane, portions of the plane lodged in a building. That building is a doctor's hostel where medical students would have been gathering for lunch. We understand dozens of those students may have been killed or wounded and rushed to the nearby hospital, in addition, of course, to many other local residents who could have been wounded in that very fiery explosion. I want to go through the timeline just one more time because this happened so.
And we heard about that part already. Yeah, it's really scary. I mean, I don't know, guys, all this stuff with planes. Now, I just want to remind you here, shout out to James Lee for posting this on X. 2024, just before so-called unalivement, Boeing whistleblower John Barnett warned of major quality issues in the company's 787 aircraft that could lead to a fatal crash. Today, Air India Boeing 787 bound for London crashes shortly after takeoff, killing 242 people. So John was the first one I remember covering on this show where he was talking about the malpractice there. He was talking about like what Boeing was doing and not following safety protocols. I forget the other gentleman's name, but I covered him as well. But just something to keep in mind, folks. Something to keep in mind. Again, like I said, they don't care. The awful truth is that it's all about how much money you can make and how fast you can make it. And if that means that safety procedures may be overlooked and people's lives may be at risk because of it, like these corporations don't care. They just want to make money. Crazy things. Let's go to some of the comments here. If you haven't had a chance to do so, smash the like. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Just like a Care Bear. Again, the theme tonight is the awful truth. Thank you for the super chat, Miriam. I don't want my UK used to fund war against Iran. I have no grievance against them. I did not vote for this. Sending love and prayers from London, UK. I hear you, Miriam. Let's go to the comment on Rockfin. And we can go to part 2 of Tight VNC. Thank you, Stephanie, for the tip on Rockfin. Sabby, Brian Berletic did a video today where he showed the Brookings Institute report, The Path to Persia, from years ago. It lays out the exact plan that's been followed. One of the chapters is let Bibi do it, meaning it's been planned all along by the US for Israel to attack. So the US can claim they have to help. The US knew this was going to happen. They called their embassy people home. Yeah, there you go. And thank you for the tip, the rant on Rumble. Jay, Israel will be the first to launch a nuke in World War III. I believe it. Thank you, Goo. On Zionist media, they are saying it's coordinated with USA. Iran and Arabic countries see the same channels. Interesting. And thank you, Snowy. Barnett had said they were using recycled parts. Parts were uneven, slight gaps, inadequate materials. Crazy, isn't it? I know, Steve, we covered it. We just covered that already. Yeah. We have a quick update. This isn't really going to be a clipped story, but I just want to make this announcement. If you were a big fan of MTV growing up like I was, then this may be important to you. You may remember a show called Total Request Live. That was one of my favorite shows. I actually went to New York one time and I remember standing outside. I was one of the people in the crowd, like for Total Request Live, like me and my friends, we're like, let us come up, that type of thing. I say all that to say we did lose a good one in the VJ world. I don't know if everyone heard about this, but Ananda Lewis, she was the former MTV VJ and talk show host. She just passed away. She was only 52 years old. And I saw this and I thought, damn, to me, people like Ananda, when I think back to like The Real World and Road Rules, like Theo, we'll get Theo later tonight, like Theo Vaughn and all of them. To me, I always in my mind, it's like they're the same age back then that I still think they're the same. Like, I was shocked to hear, number one, she was in her 50s. I didn't even put this together, but that she passed away. And it's very sad. Apparently, Ananda had a battle with breast cancer, and she decided not to pursue treatment. I think she was going to try to find a different way to take care of that. Here's one of the last videos, I believe, that she posted on her Instagram before she passed away.
Is the body you're in right now healthy? I mean, like, relatively no big diseases. If so, consider it like a winning lotto ticket. I know I don't talk a lot about what I go through on a day-to-day basis, wrestling the big sea monster. Part of it is because I refuse to give it any more energy than it's already taking from my life, but also because it's not useful. It doesn't matter how bad things are in my body right now. What does matter is keeping you out of this club. There are things I wish I did differently like 10 years ago to prevent cancer. And I am talking about them. In this issue of Essence Magazine, this is the January-February issue with the lovely and talented Sha'Carri Richardson on the cover. There's an article in here where I lay a bunch of stuff out for you. You can get the hard copy or you can go to essence.com. And thank you, Victoria Uwu Moroji, for making that happen. And I'm giving you more details as a guest host on the most recent episode of the late Shannon Doherty's podcast, Let's Be Clear. You can find that on iHeartRadio and a bunch of other podcast platforms.
Yeah, it's interesting because Shannon Doherty also passed away from breast cancer.
And thank you to Lorraine and the whole Let's Be Clear team for having me on. Both links are in my profile, so go read or go listen, go learn something. You can avoid this. Only 5 to 10% of cancers have anything to do with genetics. That leaves 90% that are environmentally or lifestyle influenced, and some of those are things you can control. Prevention is the cure because preserving your health is way easier than fighting to get.
Yeah, it's crazy because even in that video, she was sick. And like I wouldn't have, I just saw that video earlier today, but like I wouldn't have known that she was sick, like watching that video, if I didn't hear like her talking about like, being sick. Like, yeah, really sad. Like we lost another one. And that was back when MTV used to actually play music videos. Some of us grew up with the days where MTV played music videos. I used to watch MTV first thing in the morning. I would turn on, I had a little TV in my room. I would turn on my TV and turn it on to MTV. And I used to have the music playing while I was getting, ready for school. Like that's how I always knew about the new songs and stuff like that. And I used to love when I got home from school to watch Total Request Live. And it was like, there was Ananda and there was Carson. What's I forget his last name, but you guys know Carson. There was Carson, Ananda. There was Jesse, there was Bill Bellamy. Like there were so many different MTV VJs. And like back then, like to be a VJ was like a big deal, but we don't really have that anymore, but definitely wanted to make sure that I shouted that out. Carson Daly, that's his name. Thank you, Skylar. Yeah. Yeah. Back when they played music videos. Crazy how times have changed. Times have changed. Okay. We have a good story. A really positive one, which is good considering the news we just came back from. Oregon just voted to outlaw private equity in healthcare. This is a really big story. I got to tell you guys, I am seeing more and more get accomplished through the states, whether it's ballot measures, whether it's the Supreme Court pushing actions back to the states and saying, you deal with it. There were a number of states that passed a woman's right to choose, even some of them being red states. So I think this is a heads up for everybody. I think, again, a lot of our fight is going to be more so on the local level. And I really do think that we're going to see more actions through the states. But what is the problem with private equity in healthcare? Let me show you this video first, and then we'll get into what Oregon has been able to accomplish.
He's dedicated his life to service as an Army surgeon and emergency room doctor.
I took an oath to protect patients to the best I could.
After he left the Army, Bravant took a job as medical director of the ER at Overland Park Regional Medical Center in Kansas. It was 2012, and soon after, he began raising concerns.
I felt that they were prioritizing metrics over quality of care.
He says by 2014, staff was stretched thin when an expansion project doubled the hospital's capacity, and the private equity-backed firm in charge of handling staff refused to add more doctors. It's a growing complaint across the country. Doctors and nurses concerned profits are put ahead of patients as more private equity firms take over healthcare groups. Today, it's estimated over 40% of the nation's emergency departments are overseen by for-profit staffing companies, all of them owned by private equity. These Wall Street firms look for a return on their investments on a shorter timeline, and academic researchers tell us the largest profits are often in the ER.
How does that? I have been sounding the alarm about private equity. I actually had a speech about this that I gave at the Community Church of Boston last year. Listen, people have to understand how dangerous private equity has become in just like our everyday lives. Like, for example, they've been buying up housing, right? Private equity has dipped its toe into the real estate market where they're buying, apartment complexes. And now they have a hold on that. People can't buy single family homes, not just because they can't afford it, but because private equity, they dip their toe over there and they're like, we are going to buy those homes and we're going to jack up the price so that everyday people can't afford to buy a home. Well, private equity also exists in healthcare. And then you see what is happening here, how healthcare basically has become a for-profit system. And it's not necessarily as much focused on how are we going to help people and heal people. The focus is how much money are we going to make? This should have never happened, but here we are.
Affect patient safety.
What I was concerned with is having an adequate time to do the job properly. As our volumes grew and the popularity of our ER grew and our responsibilities grew, it became clear to us that my physicians were being asked to be in 3 places at once.
Bravant says that wasn't the only problem. He says doctors and nurses were expected to improve metrics by admitting more patients without adequate exam time or bed space.
This also happens in education. More and more teachers are being forced to have larger classroom size. So they're being forced to have more students in the classroom, but no extra resources, no extra help. And now you see this is happening in healthcare as well. Some of you watching, you may have worked in the healthcare system. Maybe you're a nurse. Maybe your mom was a nurse. Maybe your friend is a nurse. And talk to some of your friends and your family members that are nurses. Talk to them about them and ask them, like, how has their patient to nurse ratio been recently? Are they giving more patients with less time? You know, again, it's all for profit.
You want your doctor to be the advocate for you. And if they have this business interest over their shoulder, they may not be able to make the best decision for you.
Dr. Robert McNamara is the chair of emergency medicine at Temple University. He's also the chief medical officer of a group representing about 8,000 emergency doctors nationwide.
Do you think private equity firms should be in the business of medicine?
Certainly not in emergency medicine. You're having people that are seeking to make a significant profit off of healthcare.
There are laws on the books to prevent the corporate practice of medicine. Are they not being enforced?
No, they're not being enforced.
McNamara says state attorneys general rarely prosecute these types of cases, and doctors often don't speak up for fear of losing their jobs.
So even the doctors are held by the knife. You see that? Now, notice what he even did. I think he's afraid too. Notice how he said, well, not in the emergency situation. Private equity shouldn't be involved in healthcare, period. Period. But I think he's also afraid of losing his job. See how that works? The doctors are also beholden to the pharmaceutical companies.
And these are billion-dollar companies that you're fighting. You're fighting Wall Street.
Ray Brevant was ultimately fired in 2017 after raising his concerns. By then, the company that controlled his unit staffing was no longer owned by private equity, but by a for-profit publicly traded company. In 2017, he filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against the staffing company's subsidiaries. His former hospital was not named in the suit, and the private equity firm did not respond to NBC News. A year later, the company was back in the hands of another private equity firm. Brevant was eventually awarded $26 million.
I had to be the guy that stepped up and said, this is wrong, but there's a principle behind why I'm doing this.
In a statement.
And this is the right response, right? Sue. Sue. Someone said it in the chat just a minute ago. Someone said, sue them. Sue. I told you, you got to start suing people. Sue these people. Because the only thing they understand, their only language they understand is money. That's it. So sue these people. He did the right thing. Won $26 million, right? When in reality, all he wanted to do was he wanted that system to change, and he probably wanted to still keep his job. They ended up paying him more than what he wasn't going to make $26 million in his profession. So think about that. So they ended up paying out more. Now, I show you that because we got to do a little celebration for Oregon. We got to do it, okay? And I may have to drop the beat because it's not every day that something like this happens. Shout out to Oregon, folks. State passes first in nation bill to block corporate control of radiology practices. This is breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. That is Oregon's Capitol building there. I've never been to Oregon State. If you've been there, let me know what it's like. Oregon recently passed what advocates believe is the first bill in the nation aimed at blocking corporate ownership of medical practices in radiology and other specialties. Democratic Governor Tina Kotek signed the measure into law on Monday, June 9th, over the objection of opponents such as Amazon and the Oregon Ambulatory Surgery Center Association. In 1947, the state established the corporate practice of medicine doctrine to ensure medical decisions are made by licensed professionals. This covered everything from how much money is spent on care to staffing levels, time spent with patients, and to whom physicians can sell their practice. However, advocates contend private equity firms and other corporations have exploited loopholes by employing or contracting with physicians who are listed as owners to comply with the doctrine. Instead, these docs often lack true control over the practice. Senate Bill 951 closes this loophole, restoring the intent of the corporate practice of medicine doctrine and protecting the integrity of patient care in Oregon. Let's drop the beat for Oregon Fam, we gotta drop the damn beats. Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat. In the street. Woo! All right, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't think we would drop the beat tonight, but but then I saw the story and I'm like, no, we have a good news story. We got a good news story. We got to drop it because this is big, you guys. This is big. So they go on to say, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We are defending a principle that once made Oregon a leader in protecting patients. This is coming from Republican Representative Cyrus Javati. Back in 1947, we drew a clear line between who could own a clinic and who could practice medicine because we understood that healthcare isn't just a business, it's personal. I would say the problem of healthcare becoming a business is part of how, we got here. Senate Bill 951 updates that line for a world where private equity firms and management companies have figured out how to blur it. We owe it to patients and to doctors who still believe in putting care first to draw that line again. In the making for this legislation, state lawmakers cited a 2023 perspective piece. It contended that recent multi-billion-dollar primary care investments by Amazon and CVS could threaten equitable access, raise costs, and reduce physicians' clinical autonomy. The bill limits control these companies, can have in clinic operations and bans non-compete agreements used to prohibit radiologists and other physicians from taking jobs at different practices. So this is huge, guys. This is huge. And you know why I bring this up again when we talk about the states? Because here's the awful truth. I am seeing it more and more, guys, where I think most of the wins are going to be on the state level. Rather, it has been passing $15 minimum wage, which we've passed here in my state, Massachusetts, and we've also passed in many other states as well across the country, even in some red states. Yes. When you look at some of those progressive policies that a lot of us support, these seem to pass a little bit easier in the states. We are not able to pass them on the national level, at least not now, right? But they're passing in the states. And I just bring up this again about ballot measures, right? So Oregon is one of those states. They have direct, constitutional amendment or state statute. It's one of those states, again, where we can use our power on the ballot through the state level. And just to show you one of the measures that they had, now, not everything passed, right? So one thing that was ratified was impeachment of elected state executives amendment. But one of the ones that I wanted to show you, which apparently did not pass in a lot of the states, was ranked choice voting. And I'm trying to explain to people, I think the reason why it does not pass is because I think people just have a difficult time understanding that question. But again, as much as we have been asking for ranked choice voting, you can see it was defeated there. It was a no by 52.5%. But as much as we've been asking about it on the national level, it has been able to pass on the local level, whether it was through a BI or an amendment. And I really think this is where we are going to see the wins. This is why I keep trying to bring up some of these local conversations, because I want you guys to know, I know things look bleak on the national level, but in the states, things are passing. And if we blink, we might miss it. So let's make sure we're paying attention to those things as well. Okay, let's go to some of the comments and then we'll get to the next story here, ladies and gentlemen. This one's going to be a little bit entertainment. Thank you, Jay. Did you know Israel attacked USS Liberty 47D117? Yes, we've talked about it before. That's been brought up before on the show. Thank you, Courtney. You said it right, Sab. Jesus, God spared his life. Thank you, Jay. I remember when Ananda had her own talk show in the early 2000s that I watched all the time. May she rest well in heaven. Yeah, I know. Ananda was so nice. She was so sweet. Huda says, yes, this is a great story. Well done, Oregon. And Miriam says, I don't want my UK. Oh, wait, I said that already. Sorry. Somehow I got that again. Or maybe that's another one. I don't want my UK taxes used to fund war in Iran. I've expressed this to my MP. God bless you for your efforts and excellent analysis, Sabby. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Could you imagine if the set was any other country? Yep. Thanks, Roger. Last month, Bondi dropped criminal case against Boeing. Yeah. How convenient, right? And thank you for this one. Oregon task force must have plan to implement Medicare for all by 2027. Hey, who knows? They might be able to pull it off. And thank you for the super sticker, VS Need. Thank you. What a need, what a need, what a need, what a need. We're going to get into a different type of story. Maybe you can vent with me if you want to, but we have to discuss this. Producer, director, writer, billionaire, actor, Tyler Perry is facing some backlash again. No, seriously though, this time it is for his more recent film called Straw. It is on Netflix. It stars Taraji P. Henson. I watched it. And to be fair, because I knew I was going to discuss this story on the show, I watched it twice so that I could be fair. Because you guys know, Tyler Perry gets on my nerves, and I'll explain to you why. But Brittany says, I don't care what anyone says about Tyler Perry. Straw was phenomenal. Sadly, this is so many Black women's reality. We are often not seen and expected to be strong no matter what. An amazing job was done by Taraji and Tiana. Yes, because Tiana was also, she's one of the police officers in this movie. Let me break it down, folks. I'm not going to, no spoilers here, just in case you want to watch it. But basically, to make a long story short, Taraji P. Henson's character is a single mom who has one hell of a 24 hours. Probably the worst day imaginable. Worst day imaginable. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to give too much away. Taraji P. Henson, I think, is a phenomenal actress. That's not something you can take from her. I will say she's an amazing actress. She gives it 110% every performance that I've seen her in. That being said, Straw has received, I think, about 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is good for Rotten Tomatoes because they can be pretty harsh. And this is the best performing movie that Tyler Perry has made critic-wise for Rotten Tomatoes, from what I've seen for so far. But there seems to be a divide here among the Black community where some people thought it was an amazing movie and others said they are tired of the Tyler Perry repetitive storyline. So let me dive into this just a little bit. Here's the thing. I think that if this movie had been made and we're not seeing the typical down, beaten, bruised, struggling, Black woman character, I think people feel differently. You see, the problem that Tyler Perry runs into is that his movies have become kind of predictable. Like, I already know that the female character is probably going to be going through something, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, or, just in this case, there's emotional and verbal abuse towards her from her supervisor. But and some other people, I just know it. I just know it, right? At least the last couple of movies that he's been making. Now, don't get me wrong. There were some movies by him that I did like. I liked Why Did I Get Married with Janet Jackson, right? And Tyler Perry is in that movie. I actually liked Why Did I Get Married. Why did I get married to? Should have just left it at why did I get married? Like that type of thing, right? I like The Family That Prays. I thought that one was pretty well written. That's kind of it. Like, I mean, it's so predictable. If you watch The Diary of a Mad Black Woman, Tyler Perry has a tendency to over exaggerate. Like, okay, her husband left her for another woman and he's dragging her out the house down the steps. It's too much sometimes. Like it's too much to the point that I know it's a movie, but it's too much to the point where this is not realistic, right? We know in real life, nobody goes to this extreme. He overdoes it, long story short. And what you'll see, even with the movie Straw, again, Taraji P. Henson, amazing, phenomenal actress. She carries the movie. She carries the movie. Without Taraji, I don't know that this received 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. I really don't. I don't know. But it does address important issues like mental health, which, I think is also important. But what do I mean by over the top? Okay. The way that her supervisor spoke to her, to me, that just does not seem realistic. And I've had asshole bosses in my life. But again, it's like Tyler Perry had to take it and dial it up to 12, not even to 10, and make it just so ridiculous and outrageous and over the top that it doesn't feel realistic. He has a tendency to do that. It's too much. Too much. There's another part where Taraji kind of just looks up and goes, and she's having one hell of a day. But again, the way that it's done, and not on her, it's just the sequence of the script. The way that it's done, it just feels over the top and it doesn't feel realistic. So that's something that he has an issue with. But then there's the characters. Now, I know some of the guys are going to tell me, hold up. Some of us dudes have been saying in the past, we didn't like the way that we were represented. The male characters were represented in his movies. I hear you. I heard you then too. I agreed. I agreed back then. I agree now. And now more people are saying they don't like the way that the women are being represented in this movie. Also, I don't know if people caught this. Did you know that Sinbad was in this movie? Yeah, that's him. I haven't seen him in a long time. It says, yes, that's the Sinbad you spotted in Tyler Perry's Straw. That's him in the movie. So I was kind of surprised that he was in that, but it's been quite a minute. But the way that the women are portrayed, let's get into it. I'm telling you, people are not happy. Tyler, they're not happy with you. Tyler Perry's Netflix drama Straw has Black internet divided. Oh boy. And there's Taraji. And again, like I said, I love Taraji. I think she's an amazing actress. I really do. I also remember, by the way, Tyler, you don't get a pass. I still remember the mistreatment that you did towards the cast of The Color Purple, the remake of The Color Purple. I still remember what you and Oprah did, mistreating the cast, not giving them adequate, the right food that they should have. They don't have like proper trailers and all that stuff. I still remember you and Oprah are billionaires. You guys can afford to do better. Like I said, there's no such thing as a good billionaire, right? I see someone in the chat mention Monique. Yeah, right. So let's get into it, folks. What are people mad about? Tyler Perry won the weekend with his Netflix film Straw, the latest project to come out of his multi-year first look deal with the streamer. The emotional drama written, directed, and produced by Perry says Taraji P. Henson as Janaya, a struggling single mother who finds herself at the end of her rope after a series of devastating events make it even more difficult to take care of her sick daughter. But while the film earned 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, that's his highest score he's been able to get there, the reviews are mixed, with some calling it one of Perry's best works and others saying it's not what Black people need right now. The debate played out on social media, with users divided on whether we need yet another film about struggling Black woman. One ex-user criticized Perry for capitalizing a Black woman's struggle. Let's look at this one here. The Salt of the Earth said, Tyler Perry knows how to get that bag. Make movies about single moms being some victims, and they'll watch that shit. His latest offering, Straw, is trash, like all his movies, but the women love that. I don't even know that we do. I think people like to see drama. People like to watch like things that are dramatic or whatever. I, for one, have been saying this for quite some time. I had my criticism about Divorce in the Black, which to me I thought was poorly written and poorly executed. No shade on Megan Good. Again, I think she carried that movie. You know what I mean? Like he'll have like a big name star in there that can carry it, but the script is trash. So I wasn't a fan of that. I wasn't a fan of Mia Culpa. I'm like, Kelly Rowland is in this movie, and this is a cheap, whack script that you gave her. And I also wonder sometimes, what were the actresses? How do they feel? Like, did Taraji think this was a great script? Like, did Kelly Rowland think that Mia Culpa was a great script? Because I did not at all. I think that Tyler Perry needs to go back to his roots. I think that in order for him to produce another movie like Why Did I Get Married, I think he needs to produce less movies, focus less on quantity, and focus more on quality. I think that's what's happening here. Because the reality is people would rather wait for a good quality movie than just watch all these, you're pushing out movie after movie after movie and the quality is just not there, right? That's what I think. Katrina said, I completely agree with you, Sabby. Yeah, like I said, I think his movies were a little bit better earlier on. And I think you're trying to do too much, too fast, too soon. Like now it's like you have this contract with Netflix. So that probably means he has to produce a certain number of movies per year. And sometimes people have writer's block. I get writer's block sometimes. And if you're forced to produce and what are you producing, right? So quality is important. He goes on to say a TikTok star said, it would be nice to see something else happening with Black women, but that's his niche and that's just what he's going with. As a mother and as a single mother, I feel like it was a little too much for me. So we'll see different opinions here. Flirty Plum Bob said, maybe I'm a tough critic, but Tyler Perry's Straw was unrealistic and over dramatic. I did give it 5-10 at best, and that's only because Taraji P. Henson carried that movie on her back. I'd say watch Breaking 2022, which is based on a true story with the same exact plot. Okay, so that's one opinion there. I want you to hear what this woman said. Check this out.
Black women, and I'm not saying allegedly because the proof is in the pudding. It is becoming more evident that Tyler only sees Black women as hardworking, struggling, great victims that of course one day are going to be rescued by a blue-collared Black man. After watching the trailer of his latest film, Straw, starring Taraji P. Henson, I'm a little offended. And honestly, I'm still recovering from Mia Culpa. He has managed to make billions of dollars off the backs of Black female pain, and I'm sick of it. The media is a huge outlet for the insight of others. I partially blame the media for people's derogatory perspectives about Black women worldwide. I'm not talking about the Beyoncés and Oprahs and Kerry Washingtons of the world. I'm talking about normal, everyday Black women. It is dangerous to continue to depict us in such a lowbrow manner. Looking at you too, Issa Rae. One of them days, really? Where's our Legally Blonde? Where's our Pretty Woman? Well, maybe not Pretty Woman, but you know what I mean. Even in movies where we should be happy and preppy, like Bring It On, of course we have to be the mean Black bully cheerleaders. Do you know what type of message that's sending to everyone else? As a Black woman, I am tired of being showcased as a bottom of the barrel human being. Who's gonna tell Tyler Perry that the average Black woman is actually thriving now? We pay our bills are paid. Thank you. Black women.
Okay. She said, we pay our bills are paid. And look, I get it. I get it that Tyler Perry wants to show a different perspective. I get that, right? Like he wanted to show a perspective of a single struggling mom. Okay, but how many times you gonna show that, Tyler? Like, we've seen that over and over again. Now, when people give him this criticism, he gets really defensive. He's like, yeah, I make those movies about a Black woman struggling because Black women struggle and I want people to see the struggle. We know. We get it. We get it. We got it. Good. Every movie ain't got to be about Black woman got to struggle. Every movie doesn't have to be that. People are tired of that. Tired. Really. Now, to her point, she mentioned Where's Our Legally Blonde, like that type of movie. That's not just a Tyler Perry issue. That's a Hollywood issue. How often do you see romantic comedies where the lead is a Black female or a Black male? Usually romantic comedies are white female, white male. Usually that's typically how it's been. So we've talked about this before, right? We've heard this from Asian cultures. There have been, Asian Americans that said, how often do you see an Asian man as a romance interest, right? So this is a Hollywood thing. Now, I bring this up because Tyler Perry was supposed to be something different. When Tyler Perry got his own studio, that was like a big deal. It's like, okay, well, now you'll get to see those types of characters played by different people. Like, you'll get to see like Black women playing like the Legally Blonde role or something like that. Like, you'll get to see those types of things. Nope. Best he could do was Mia Copa. And that was just bad. It's just, I'm like, dude, this is so bad. This one was really funny. Heated says Tyler Perry done made the same movie 69 times, but I'm still here watching. Oh my God. I love it. I'm sorry, but I love it. But again, if we go back to Straw, again, don't want to give spoiler, but even all the things that happened to her in that one day, that is also over the top. He always has to take it to that extra like level. Like, I don't know, a divorce in the Black at the very beginning. Come on. How realistic is it that this family is going to pull this guy out the casket while he's dead and all this stuff? Come on, man. It gives people the impression that this is who we are as Black people. And as an entertainer and as a writer, he has a right to write about what he wants. But he also has the right to be open to criticism. And he seems to get very defensive when people tell him we're tired of seeing the same thing over and over. Every time I see a new Tyler Perry movie appear on Netflix, I get, a little bit like, well, maybe this time it'll be different. No, not different. Really not. And so people just want to see something different. And you can have a Black female character play someone that's not a bitch, not struggling, not down and out. I think about the movie Temptation. It was the movie Temptation where the girl and the guy that they dated when they were teenagers and then they got married and all that stuff. And then she cheats on him with some executive dude or whatever. And then the next thing you know, she has AIDS or something. And then she's walking with a cripple and all. Like, how that happened that fast? That's what we're talking about. The over the top, you always got to take it to the point where it does not feel realistic. So I think it's just a money issue. Was it HIV? It was HIV. Sorry. I think Cloudness said, oh Lord, like, it's just over the top. It's ridiculous. I still remember, and I'll bring this up, I still remember Diary of a Mad Black Woman. And even back then, I remember some of the dudes were like, so let me get this straight. The dark-skinned guy is the one who cheats on his wife and drags her out the house, abusive towards her. And then she gets rescued by pretty boy, light-skinned guy, Shamar Moore. I heard all that back then. I heard it. I understand. I get it. I just didn't think these things would continue. And it continued and continued. So if you want to watch it, I mean, it's up to you. It's on Netflix. Like I said, Taraji, a phenomenal actress, lots of love, lots of energy. That movie is nothing without Taraji. I'll be very clear about that. And at the same time, you know, two things can be true at once. It's time for Tyler Perry to tell a different story. Because when it gets to the point where your characters have become somewhat predictable, people start to lose interest. You know, it's kind of like sex life. Like you got to spice it up sometimes, you know? You can't be like, let's do the same position. You know, you got to spice things up a little bit. Well, in film, I think he has to do that too. I think he has to spice things up a little bit. And that doesn't mean go over the top to the point where the story is not even realistic in people's minds. That's my take on it. That's kind of how I see it. Let's go ahead and get to the comments here. Zalippa says theater is his main bag. And maybe that's what it is, Zalippa. Maybe that's, you know, you got to find your strength, right? So maybe that is his best thing. I mean, I think he did a really good job with Why Did I Get Married? And I thought that was great. Katrina said, cheat on your husband, you get AIDS when you That's what it is. Katrina saw the movie. Okay. Let's go to some of the other comments. Sorry about that. Thank you, Wandy. Hated Straw until the end, then loved it. The end was like, damn. Yeah. The end was, I don't want to say too much because I know everybody hasn't seen it. Thank you, Gamble. Mr. Perry built and sustains his empire by hyper sensationalizing the worst, our domestic situations. I think you're right. Katrina said, I liked his few plays he did live. Yeah, that's what seems with people. Q Quita says, I like the Medea movies. Okay. Yeah, I think that is his strength, right? Zalippa says Medea goes to Israel. You guys are too much. Thank you, VS. As a Black woman and pastor's wife, I've already rebuked this anti-biblical behavior to people. Doing the thing. And thank you, Nicole. Tyler Perry needs to hire some writers. You think maybe that's it, Nicole? That he's trying to do too much? Like he's trying to do too much? It's a lot of work to direct, produce, and write. I think you're right. I think he needs to let someone else write these scripts because, honey. Okay. That's right. Oh, man. All right. We got one more story and then we'll head into call in. This one should be a rather quick one. Yeah. I finally got a chance to see this interview. So I know I'm a little bit late with this, so sorry, but we got to talk about at least one part of this conversation. Theo Vaughn interviewed Vice President JD Vance. Now, every time I see Theo, I still think about Theo from Road Rules, MTV Road Rules. You know, it like boggles my mind. Like he'll always be Theo from Road Rules to me. Just like Sean will always be Sean from The Real World Boston to me, even though he's a politician. You know what I mean? It's just weird. But Theo was just so down to earth and like didn't adjust like who he was because he was talking to the vice president. That's what I really loved about this interview. But he brings up this issue about Palantir and then Gaza. Oh, let's get into this.
Tier company, right?
Yeah.
And that's about a surveillance thing. So this thing is fucked. This sounds crazy, dude. Like this sounds like we're only going to be human for like 2 more years, right? So and this is the Palantir company where they're going to build security databases that have all of our information in them, right? That's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying, yeah.
And it's going to have like everything. It'll like look at you and know like if you're good at tennis or if you've ever, you know, if you have $60 in your pocket or if you're, you know, it can tell if your kids are, you know, if your kids can have a limp or whatever, if they'll be in the Christmas play.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It can tell all of that. And that feels real scary, man. Like
I get it.
To a regular guy on the street,
yeah.
that feels like we're going to give our society like we're going to become these like they're going to have know everything about us. It makes you feel like you won't be a person anymore.
I hear you.
Does that make sense?
I love this part. I'm sorry. I love this. The way he said it, he was like, they're going to know everything about us. And it's like, we won't be a person anymore. No, it's true. And I think it's so great that he can break it down this way to JD Vance. Like, again, notice he's not changing his vocabulary. He's not changing like his style, his approach of interview just because he's talking to the vice president. And that's what I thought was really stunning about this interview, but also that he's challenging JD Vance. He's not just giving him a pass because he's the vice president. And we've watched people do this before. Like we've watched podcasters give politicians a pass because they're a politician and they want to continue to have access. But he didn't do that. So he's making it very clear. This Palantir thing is spooky, man. Spook.
Sense to you?
No, it definitely makes sense to me. I mean, let me try to explain. So to be clear, I'm not an expert on this particular deal. I actually just read about it earlier today or maybe yesterday. But the president did an executive order, I don't know, a couple months ago. And the basic idea is you've got all this different information, but it's not accessible in one place. So like, let me give you an example where this might be useful.
Okay.
Let's say you catch an illegal immigrant, okay? And that person's using a social security number, but the Department of Homeland Security that arrests the person can't actually figure out what social security number that illegal immigrant is, what name it's attached to, okay? Or, let's say you're like investigating some terrorist and the FBI arrests the person, but there are information about like where the person lived a couple of years ago that you'd like to have. So you'd maybe like to go, talk to their friends or associates or whatever.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that it does sound odd, but that what they're trying to do is take all the information that the Department of Homeland Security has, that the FBI has, and just make it so that it's actually not in some hyper inefficient system. It's all sort of accessible. And
pause. Let me explain to you what JD Vance just did. Notice the examples that he gave. You have an illegal immigrant or you have a terrorist, right? Okay. Doesn't that sound similar to the Patriot Act? Doesn't it kind of sound similar to what Obama and Hillary Clinton, remember Hillary Clinton, she was on board for that. Doesn't it sound similar to like what they said that like this type of technology will be used to focus on people that are terrorists or engage in terrorist activity, maybe people who are here illegally that shouldn't be, et cetera. Don't forget, Obama was like the porter in chief. Don't forget that. Doesn't that sound familiar? But then later on, damn, thanks to Edward Snowden, come to find out, they were actually spying on just a bunch of people for whatever. You didn't have to be here, illegally. You didn't have to be a terrorist. They were just watching every damn body just because they wanted to. They just wanted to spy on everybody. So yeah, that is a violation of privacy. And I took serious issue with that. And I take serious issue with what Palantir is trying to do. What I'm trying to explain to you is that what they do is they get you to buy into it by telling you that it's just to focus on people who are illegal immigrants and people who are terrorists. So you feel like you're safe. Now let's think about this for a second, because this is the same talking point that Laura Loomer is pushing out into the ether. You really think that if they have this type of technology, they're only just going to look for those people? You think they're only just going to look into them and not look into other people too? Think about that for a second.
Here's the thing. Modern technology is just crazy and weird, and it affects our privacy. And I think we don't have to think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. It is like a reality of the world that we live in.
Right.
And
sometimes
so
I get a little romantic about things.
Well, I mean, look.
And I think it's going to go back in time.
I mean, look, everybody, I kind of agree with you. I think people are sort of going to rebel against technology a little bit. In some ways they already are. But I mean, look, dude, if I, this has happened to me so many times where I'm talking to my wife, like, oh, what are we gonna make for dinner for the kids tonight? Oh, let's just like do DoorDash or Grubhub. Mm-hmm. And then you go on like X or you go on, Facebook or Instagram, and there's like an advertisement for a DoorDash coupon. And it's like, well, I was just talking about this 10 minutes ago. So we know that big technology spies on us and harvests our data. I honestly worry more about that than about like connecting the DHS system to the FBI system.
So that's all that.
No, excuse me. Especially people like me. Yeah, I'm not fond of the FBI. I kind of see the FBI. I see the FBI as more of a problem than I even do Facebook. Because here's the thing. The FBI killed revolutionary leaders. The FBI killed Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton. They killed people who were trying to fight for a better world for Black people. They killed them, got rid of them. So I don't have any trust or faith in the FBI, and neither should you guys. So Facebook is annoying, can be a pain in the ass. Don't get me wrong. The censorship is absolutely ridiculous. But how many people still use Facebook on a regular everyday anyway? I mean, because I can tell you, when I look at my personal Facebook page, it's really annoying. I can't get through 2 posts without seeing a damn ad. I can't scroll through 2 posts without seeing an ad pop up. It's annoying. So you'll probably see me post on the Sabby Sabs page. Like I'll post like I'm going live, or I'll post like, this clip is posted or something like that. But I don't post as much on my personal Facebook the way that I used to, because all I see are ads. It's just kind of annoying. But Facebook didn't kill MLK, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. The FBI did. The FBI has been known to crush progress.
This Palantir deal is part, like a lot of that. It's just connecting information.
So I'm hardly an expert, but that is my understanding is that it's just taking, DHS has information, FBI has information, Secretary of the Treasury has information, and making it possible for that information to be searched by whoever is looking for it.
Oh,
that's my understanding.
Yeah.
But again, like I hear that story, and my reaction is the same, which is, I don't like the government having my information. The reality is the government already has my information. And more importantly, some of these private technology companies have way more information on me than the government does.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, anywhere you shop has unbelievable information on you. I mean, let me tell you,
Now this is JD Vance trying to make the excuse for the government to be able to spy on you. Oh, well, Facebook is watching you. Everybody else is watching you. Oh, even where you shop, they're watching you. Okay. So monkey see, monkey do. Right. So there's a big difference between what Facebook can see and do with that data and what the FBI can see and do with that data. There's a big difference. Crazy stuff, isn't it? And this is who people thought were going to take out the deep state. Okay.
Dude, Blockbuster 2 days ago, Blockbuster was like, "Happy birthday." They were wrong.
So I gotta.
It's like, you're out of business. There's a.
Yeah. When was the last time you were at a Blockbuster?
But some guy somewhere, probably in another country, Nepal,
you and
is
FDR
sitting somewhere.
You and FDR took your Celsius and went down to Blockbuster to get some VHS rentals. Okay,
a little bit of boogie, boogie nights for the fellas.
That was FDR's favorite movie, so that makes sense. So all right, what were we talking about? Technology. Okay, so I was getting a brief. So
because that's what people
when
are
I first became they are, and I get it. And look, like all I'll tell you is we try to be as
I did go to the last Blockbuster. I forgot about that. Shout out Bend, Oregon.
Is that 14 years ago?
That's freaking 2 years ago.
Oh,
dude.
I didn't even realize Blockbuster.
My ex lived out there. He got stuck in the snow out there.
Yeah. So
we're gonna fast forward just a little bit. It's funny when I saw the Blockbuster because that brings back old memories, right? If you guys have ever been to a Blockbuster store, type 1 in the chat. I'm just curious if you've ever been to Blockbuster. I never would have thought those would end ever.
So I got a brief from my national security guy. I gotta make sure it's not classified information. Okay, no, it's not classified information. Okay, basically, long story short, one of the guys who works in the national security team of the Trump administration gave me this brief about how, when you're using an iPad and let's say, you're reading a story from some random newspaper and you hover on a particular paragraph, like your iPad is collecting that information on you.
God.
Like it's actually trying to track what you're doing. Like that is the stuff that really freaks me out.
Well, how do we stop that? I think it freaks everybody out. I think it just makes people sick. It's like you don't even feel like you exist for any purpose anymore other than to be advertised to or to be I don't even know anything else.
Well, you think about it like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, the most brilliant scientists in the world, they're trying to figure out nuclear energy. They're trying to figure out how to cure cancer. Now, way too many of them are figuring out like, how do I get a person to linger on a digital advertisement for a little bit longer so that we can increase the price of the ad that we sell them by 3 pennies?
Yeah.
Like there's something I think that warps our entire economy about the digital advertisement world, because too many smart people are focused on getting us addicted to these applications.
Yeah.
And I mean, what do we do about it? I mean,
so, I mean, there's not much that JD Vance can really say to do about. I mean, he depends on a lot of these companies, right? Like whether it's fundraising, for different political campaigns, et cetera. He depends on a lot of those things. Is this for real? JD Vance is 4 years younger than Theo. The hell no. Seriously? Hells no. Really? Okay, we may have to come back to that one. I'll start that one for maybe Eric will look into that at some point. Jesus Christ. Damn.
One thing is from a policy perspective, we've already looked into a lot of things we can do on data privacy and protection. So we're trying to make it harder for these firms to collect information on you.
Well, it feels like with Palantir, it's like they're going to collect all the information though. So that feels like,
I mean, look, my understanding again. So this is full disclosure because I think it's important. I think it's important. I think it's important.
I love that part. I love that part when he says Palantir is going to gather all our information. He's like, well, I don't really know. Is there someone else that you can point us to that knows more about it? I love that part. I love it because he really captures JD Vance right there. This is crazy. Theo's 45. Well, damn, Theo does not look 45 at all. He doesn't. But I can't believe JD Vance is younger than This is where JD Vance gets really nervous because Theo's just like, does somebody else know what this is about?
To be open. So Palantir, you asked about Peter Thiel. Palantir is actually one of the companies that he invested in, right? So,
he doesn't run it.
My understanding is he doesn't run it, but I don't believe that Palantir is collecting any information. I believe it's purely building a database that's sort of combining the information. I might have some of my team that you guys get. Is that right? Is that accurate? Okay, cool.
No, I'm glad. Yeah. Because we're just trying to figure it out.
I love it. He's like, we're just trying to figure it out. By the way, Peter Thiel created JD Vance. So just keep that in mind. I think he knows more about this than he's pretending.
And right now, I think Palantir has there's a lot of conflict right now in Gaza. Everybody knows about that.
Of course. And
Palantir is been accused of being complicit in a lot of the violence over there. And so I think that's where it gets really scary for regular person on the street. I'm like, well, if this is the company, because you see videos of horrific stuff online.
Sure. Very sad stuff.
And you're like,
did everybody see the look on JD Vance's face? Sure. Very, very sad stuff. That's all an act from JD Vance, right? He's very well aware. Very well aware. Yeah, very sad stuff. He doesn't think it's sad. The moment he decided to, take money from whether it's AIPAC or Kufi, the moment he decided to take that type of, the Israeli lobby interest money, he knew exactly what he was signing up for. He doesn't care about those kids that are being killed in Gaza. All he cares about is his political career, where he's going. Because think about it. If something happens to Trump, he's next in line. I don't know. Grizzly Care Bear is next in line. Someone said on social media that JD Vance kind of looks like a Care Bear or like a fuzzy little Care Bear or whatever. But anyway, he's next in line.
if this is the company we're hiring, how do I know that I might not be walking down the street and just a sniper bullet could hit me from them, you know?
So that is,
to be really honest with you.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And I think the answer to that question is the only real protection that we have against that is that we've got to, elect the right people, and we've got to make sure that our government doesn't do crazy stuff. Because, I mean, look, any of this information can be misused. Like our government has your social security number. Okay. Yeah. Using that information, the government could spy on you. The government could give your information over to an illegal alien to start a fake account in your name. And that, by the way, happens. I had a friend of mine who had an illegal alien steal his social security number. And when he went to the IRS to complain about it, they wouldn't give him information on the person who was stealing his stuff. And by the way, that's
Let me pause here. Does everybody notice what JD Vance is doing? Now, Theo brought up Gaza. And somehow JD Vance leads this conversation back to illegal immigration. Excuse me. Talk about deflecting much. He's talking about the images of the children dying and, your stuff could go to an illegal immigrant and da-da-da. Seriously? Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do, is make it so the IRS can talk to the Department of Homeland Security. But the only real protection against this stuff, I think, is to have a government that actually protects the rights of its citizens. And, we should all be worried about our privacy being invaded by the government. I think we should be just as worried about private corporations as we should be the government. I think, everybody can invade our privacy.
So if he thinks that we should be worried about that, then why is he trying to make an excuse for Palantir? If he thinks that we should be worried about that, why isn't he out there rejecting the Palantir project? This interview is very revealing, I think. Very revealing.
Privacy, but I don't, let me put it this way. I don't think that the solution to that problem is to pretend that the government doesn't already have this information. It just does.
Right.
You got to make sure it doesn't misuse it.
Got it.
And that's my view, at least, is we got to live in reality, and the government's already got this information. We just need to make sure they don't misuse it.
And so how are we as American citizens going to make sure the government doesn't misuse our information? I think the last time someone tried to do that, his name was Edward Snowden. And I think you see how that went. So what are you talking about, JD? What are you talking about? We'll go on next here. There's another question he brings up about Israel first.
And on the Gaza thing, just sort of, chat about that for a little bit. I mean, I'm like a human being. So I look at this stuff, I see these videos, I see the pictures, and it's very heartbreaking. And, just since you brought it up, what we're trying to do here is try to solve two problems here. Okay. So on the one hand, you've got innocent people, innocent Palestinians, and innocent Israeli hostages, by the way, who are caught up in this terrible violence that's happening as we speak. Okay. And we're trying to get as much aid and as much support into people as humanly possible. That's one thing that's going on. The other side is Israel's attacked by this terrible terrorist organization. I think people sometimes forget that, right? They forget the thing that kicked this off is that we had this terrible terrorist attack, and you had a lot of innocent Israeli civilians die in that terrorist attack.
No, that's not what kicked it off. What you see how they all have the same talking point? What kicked it off was years and years of occupation and oppression of the Palestinian people by the state of Israel. That's how you get a Hamas. Without that, you don't have a Hamas, right?
And so I think what we're trying to do in the Trump administration with that situation is to get to a peaceful resolution. And I think the peaceful resolution looks something like this. You've got to give Israel confidence that Hamas is never going to attack them and kill a bunch of civilians. And then you've got to get as much aid and support into these innocent Palestinians as possible, because in some ways they're caught in the middle of this thing too.
So ridiculous talking point here. Palestinians are being killed by Israeli snipers as they go to receive that aid. Of course, JD Vance isn't going to mention that. He says that they want peace. Again, as we just see, Israel just struck Iran. The White House is trying to pretend like they had nothing to do with this. I think we all know that that's a freaking lie. We knew that Israel was going to strike Iran. Come on, guys, let's put this together. Let's put together common sense. We knew because we read the reports that Israel was going to strike Iran, but they didn't know. Come on. Typical talking point.
One thing that I don't love about the whole Israel-Palestinian debate is I think it kind of degrades our humanity a little bit, because I've seen people on the left, mostly on the left, who will say, well, they'll completely ignore that Israel, like all these innocent Israelis were killed in this terrorist attack. And you have some people, usually on the right, who will completely ignore that there are like kids who are caught up in this violence. And I think it's why the president has been, I call him the president of peace. It's why he cares about solving this problem, because the longer this goes on, the more suffering, the more death. So we're trying to solve it as much as we can. It's not easy.
Do you have a say in it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, the president's obviously the person who makes the final decision all the time. But yeah, I mean, we certainly, I think I'm one of the few people that he's talking to constantly. We're constantly, we're talking to the Israeli government. We're talking to people in the Arab world. We're talking to people in the Palestinian territories. Like, we're constantly engaging in diplomacy. I mean, one of the crazy things, dude.
You're constantly talking. They're constantly talking, but you're still giving Israel weapons. Let's see if we get to the part here.
Has caused us to lose our humanity. I think of the people who are constantly going after Steve, because this is a guy, he's a father. He lost one of his own children because of an overdose. And he loves people. He believes in the value of human life, and he's doing a really good job. And he's one of the important people in the president's ear too.
Yeah, it seems like I've heard of Mr. Witkoff, but I never met him. But I would like,
dude.
Yeah.
You should have him.
I think the tough thing, just as a regular person, right? It's like we're seeing all these videos of people like picking up pieces of their children, and like,
of course,
it's the sickest thing I think it's ever been televised. Basically, if you consider watching something on your phone being televised,
sad, man.
It's a mass. It feels like a massacre, and it feels like, I've called it a genocide. Other people have different thoughts about it, and that's fine, right? And I don't need anybody to share the same thoughts, or you two. But I think where it gets scary is that we give, we're complicit in it because we help fund like military stuff, and that's where as like a regular guy, you're like, well, I'm paying these taxes and they're going towards this, like, but you can't do anything, like you can talk, but it's like, you can't, I don't understand how it becomes like tough for people. Like sometimes it feels like we look out for the interests of Israel before we look out for the interests of America.
So
Let's drop the beat. I'm not going to play the whole interview because you guys can watch this on his channel, but I did want to get to that part. We got to drop the beat here. Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat in the street. Wow, man. Crazy times there. You couldn't hear the beat? It looks like everybody else heard it. I think it's just you, Eric. I think it was just Eric. Okay, yeah, I think other people can. Yeah. Okay. Definitely check out the rest of this interview. I thought it was pretty cool that Theo Vaughn was pressing JD Vance like that. Here's the awful truth. JD Vance is he's acting. He's doing his acting job as vice president, as a politician. But what I think was so awesome about this is that Theo didn't change like who he was. He didn't compromise like his positions, or particularly about like Israel, what's happening to the kids in Gaza, just because he was talking to the vice president of the United States. He still, pushed back on him and told him exactly how he felt. And not everybody does that. So I thought that was amazing. Okay, we'll have a pause here. Corey and Eric, whoever does the clipping tonight, it'll probably be Corey. We'll have to add this piece to the Israel story. Okay. Okay, Corey said, got it. All right, I did a pause so that way it'll transition. And now it appears that Iran is confirming Killing of Revolutionary Guards chief in Israeli strike. Guys, check this out. Iranian state media confirms killing of Revolutionary Guards chief in Israeli strike. So again, we're just staying up to beat with the news here, ladies and gentlemen. It says that Revolutionary Guard commander Hossein Salami was killed in an Israeli strike. Oh my gosh, guys, this is going to be wild. This is not good. This is not good. Not good. Not good. Not good. Not good. Oh boy. We have another piece here. Yeah. He was killed in Israeli strikes in Operation Rising Lion. This is crazy. We already talked about the strikes. It says the response to the Israeli attack will be harsh and decisive. Are we being discussed at the highest levels? It says are being discussed at the highest levels when asked whether the attack would be imminent. Guys, this is, I don't know. Pay attention to the news for the next couple of days because it's about to get really bad. Really bad. All right, we are going to do call in. I know it's late. We'll try to be quick with call in tonight. I'm going to take a quick break. And Eric, I think we have a couple of super chats left. I can't hear you. Yeah, I think it's just you. Sure. Yeah, I think your mic's not. I sure said dumbest name for an operation. But we'll do call in. I'm just waiting for Eric to hop on real quick. And then we'll get into all that. Bebop says this is about to be an interesting summer. Yeah, you're right about that one. Crazy stuff, dude.
All right. I had to go out and come back in.
Hey, we can hear you now.
All right. Yeah, I couldn't hear the music and you couldn't hear me, but here we go. All right.
All righty. I'll be back.
All right. So this is the part of the show where I come Eric T. Ready from the background into the foreground while we give our Sabby a little break. And she'll be setting up the Zoom call-in room, and yeah, we got lots to talk about tonight, and yeah, even like we can go back to like the MMT things. You know, there can be discussions around that. You know, I think there are good connections with MMT and Steve Gumbine and what they were saying, and 11 Demands and that stuff. I think there are some good, interesting connections there. Of course, we have the big breaking news with Israel and Iran, and we'll see what else breaks while we're hitting on that. And yeah, even this interview with Theo Vaughn and JD Vance was interesting in that you really saw from Theo Vaughn. I mean, I'm sure they thought it was going to be kind of a softball interview, and you even got Theo Vaughn there saying, what's happening in Gaza is horrific, and we can't just have it happening. And what it makes me think is that there is room here for a movement against this stuff. And what I'm saying, what we've been saying with 11 Demands is that it needs to be a demands-based movement, clear, concise sets of demands on that. And yeah, so it was interesting. The other thing I noticed was you had JD Vance, and of course he's just this talking points machine. But trying to shift the blame to big businesses and trying to do this kind of fake right-wing populist thing of it's the big corporations. Don't worry about government over here. Just worry about the big corporations. And then I think Theo Vaughn or then like Palantir comes up, and it's like what does he say then? But it's all a game to try to to try to distract from the real things. But yeah, we'll be getting over to Colin soon. Let me hit. We got a couple of super chats built up here. Let's see. Thanks for the super chat, Mark, who says, JD, we know it's the immigrants and terrorists now, but the rest of us are next. Yep, Mark gets it. And thanks for the super chat, Edward Shore, who says, repeal the Patriot Act. And yeah, that can even, connect into like that's a good demand. And we need to have a lot of good demands, and like one like the Patriot Act, you can even tie in, to 11 demands. I mean, it's in there. We can even take a little look here. If you go to 11demands.org, you can get into the list of demands, and one that really connects into a lot of the news and a lot of stuff that's happening now is the end the wars, number 4. And one of the ones in there is replace the USA Patriot Act, the Espionage Act of 1917, the AUMF of 2001, and similar laws. And this is part of the idea of kind of turning it up to 11 and thinking big. Don't ask for Medicare for all, ask for health care for all, a real US NHS. And, I also wanted to hit quickly the latest Substack post from 11 Demands. That's called the core problem. It's kind of hitting on, what is the core problem. And, in our graphic here, we got the billionaires on top. We have the demands in the middle and kind of the movement. Scrolling a bit, and kind of the movement. And as the, as kind of getting from here to there. So, in engineering, there's a concept called root cause analysis, or an RCA. And the idea is that in order to fully understand a broken system, one needs to connect the dots and dig down to the root causes. Only after doing that can we determine the real solutions. Applying this concept to the problems in politics of today can be powerful. Invariably, it leads us to what I think 11 Demands is about, the core problem and the root cause. What is the root cause? How our capitalist system pushes massive wealth and resources into the hands of a small number of billionaires, and then they use those resources to corrupt the government, to act in their interests, which further increases their wealth, and on and on. It's the MC, money corruption part of MCDS. So what do we do about it? I think it's really important to remember that the key player in this system is government. As long as our government is captured by that top 0.1% and by the mega corporations, then the downward slide is going to continue. And, I would submit that any serious root cause analysis leads us to this conclusion. Conversely, if we had a uncorrupted, decorrupted government, one that is truly acting in our interests, that government could take any number of actions that would improve the material conditions of that 99%. In the 11 demands list, if you look at demands 2 through 11, it's basically a description of these actions. But all those 2 through 11 depend on demand number 1, which is to fix big money in politics and government. The money is the puppet strings. And until we cut those puppet strings, we're going to stay in the same place. But how do we get there? Right. One of the things that people love to say when we're talking about demands and 11 demands is, oh, those demands are nothing unless they have some kind of power to back them up. And when people say that, I try to be patient, with them, but it's frankly kind of an unserious criticism, because what are you saying? If you're saying that, you're saying a movement should have no demands, like we shouldn't have demands. One of the real core pillars of 11 demands is that it starts with demands. You want a general strike? Well, strikes need demands. You're going to have a protest. You're going to have a movement. You're going to have actions. Well, you need to start with demands, and having demands back that up, or else what are you really doing? So yeah, the demands are nothing unless we have some kind of power. So the power is us, right? This is the challenge. It's up to all of us, right? How do we inspire a mass movement that is clear about what it needs and is unwilling to settle for less? To gain that kind of steam, it has to be a demands first movement, one that first calls out the money and corruption relentlessly, but then also follows that up with clear demands and solutions. This is MCDS in action. The mission of the 11 Demands Collective is to be that spark. When discussing the latest drama and controversy, always bring it back to this. What is our demand? There's always a connection to one of the 11 demands, and it always leads to the same conclusion. We must decorrupt our government. Big things are happening, no less so than tonight, right? Big things are happening. It's up to us to stop waiting for our so-called leaders to do the right thing. And this is a call out, call to action to be part of the 11 Demands Collective and be the solution. And you can check out and hopefully sign up to the 11 Demands Collective. If you go to 11demands.org, it's right there, and you can join our growing list of members. And the idea is that it's a thought collective. The idea is that we all want to be being clear about our demands, having real demands and letting those demands go to the solutions.
That's right.
Jump on board. Let's see what we can build, right?
All right, let's get into call-in, ladies and gentlemen. That link is pinned at the top of the live chat. You can also find that link on sabrinasalvati.com. Let me go ahead and open the room while I am on the stream. I like to do that. So let's go ahead and open that. All right. When you join the room, I just ask that you mute yourself, please. If you want to speak, you click on the bottom here where it says raise your hand. That's how I know that you want to talk. And I'll call on those who have their hands raised. People who are oldies but goodies, they know how this works. But for the newbies, that's what you'll need to do. Eric, once you enter, I can go ahead and, okay, I got you. I'll make you a co-host. Let's go ahead and do that. Make you a co-host. All right. And I see some hands
All right, we'll see you in there.
raised. All right, guys. Again, you can also find that link to join the call-in at sabrinasalvati.com. And you'll just click on the link and you'll be right in the Zoom room. All right. That is it for me, folks. I'll be live again Sunday evening. And you'll see clips tomorrow, etc. And we're heading on over to call-in. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and bearing with me regarding the breaking news, etc. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.